Skype Sanctuary. Today I'm joined by Games Enlisted and Mr. David T. Lurker as we are going to go on a spoilerific talk of Star Wars Episode 8 The Last Jedi. I, Again, as I said, massive spoilers probably from the start. If you have not seen it, don't listen to this because we'll spoil it. But just before we get into it, why don't we give a quick view of what we think about it? I liked it. There's things I flat out hated that we'll get into. But what about you two?
Uh, uh go ahead. You say first.
Oh, me? Oh, uh, I quite enjoyed it. I liked it. I liked it a lot. It was good.
Yeah, like you said, I completely loved parts of it, but unlike you, I didn't really hate any other parts of it. I thought so much of it worked so well, and there were so many of the ideas put in the film was such new and different and really clever, and a lot of the else of it was just really enjoyable to watch. And it was something, it was kind of the perfect blend of the old and the new to create something like truly special and interesting. And once again proves my point that Rian Johnson is one of the most underrated filmmakers working today.
And I'm gonna spend the next hour proving Stefan wrong in every way. What you just said.
Nope.
Before we go, I should say today we are recording this on December 23rd, 2017.
Tomorrow's
Today
Christmas Eve.
Today is the 2-year anniversary that Stefan and me became Facebook friends. So happy anniversary.
Oh,
you
shit.
fucking moron. Your views on Star Wars are wrong, and I'm going to spank you in every way, shape, and form.
Wait.
I actually remember 2 years ago, me and Chris did a Skype Sanctuary on Force Awakens.
Oh, really? I remember
That was my first ever video on FTCR.
I remember that. So there we go. It's a good year. See, the 2017 is a great year for anniversaries at FTCR. But so let's begin. Where do we? So where do we want to start with this? Because there's a lot of talk about with Last Jedi, both good and bad.
You want to talk about the good first, or you want to go right into the bad?
Or I mean, you could try and go like through the film, start from the beginning, and drive yourself crazy trying to remember every beat, every nuance.
We could. So it opens. One thing I kind of liked how which we've never really gotten this in a Star Wars movie before. This one kind of takes up like directly after Force Awakens ends. It's like maybe I don't know, like a day or so time difference. Maybe
Yep.
like very little time has passed, and it's the first. I forget, it's First Order or is it New Order? Like,
First Order.
First Order is about to attack that new rebel base
Right.
that they landed at the end of Force Awakens, and they are planning a mass evacuation. I will say, listening to Kevin Smith's review, and his review was just he went through the movie saying how everything in it was perfect, but he did say there were a handful of moments that to him felt like Rian Johnson was just being like, fuck you, J.J. Abrams, because there's so many things that Abrams sets up in The Force Awakens that Johnson just shits on in the
That's basically the whole movie.
Jedi, which some of them work to great effect, some of them are just like, that's just like, why?
Yeah.
But yeah,
If I recall, at the end of The Force Awakens, Rey gets the Millennium Falcon, and everyone is standing there in a line waving her goodbye, and then I guess immediately after they go, "Oh shit." The First Order is about to show up, maybe we should leave. So if they hadn't stood there and waved goodbye, maybe no one would have died. So obviously, J.J. Abrams sentenced them all to death.
and then we
And and also because you mentioned how it's saying "fuck you" to Force Awakens, I also think in some way it's kind of saying "fuck you" to Rogue One as well, because the whole scene with the woman like doing her suicide run with the whole bomb thing, that felt like it was him going, "This is how you do what happened in Rogue One," like very good. I really love that scene.
I'll be honest with you, I have not thought about Rogue One much since seeing it. It's a completely inconsequential movie in the grand scheme of cinema in general. So I don't really think about Rogue One that much.
Rogue One has some like truly like great moments in it, but it also has a lot of just eh.
And it's a movie which I don't want to get red letter media on this, but it is a movie which it did not need to be told. It really like Star Wars is no different. from knowing how they got their plans. Don't really need to know how they got it. Just the fact that they got it is all you need to know.
Yeah, yeah, like you said, there isn't. It doesn't add a lot to it, but I feel like there's enough good things in it that I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad I got to see that.
Right, you get to see Space Jimmy Smits. You get to see Mon Mothma.
Space Jimmy Schmitz.
Yeah. I believe that's the correct name of the character.
Yeah.
No, but look, Rogue One. I mean, at the moment, Rogue One is the odd man out because it's like these are a bunch of characters that you don't know, and unfortunately, we see them at the tail end of their story. We don't get to spend a lot of time with them.
It's characters we don't know, except for the countless characters shoehorned into Rogue One that we did not need to
most
fucking
of them
see.
make sense, but they make sense though. Tarkin makes sense because he's involved with...
Tarkin makes sense. We did not need to see Princess Leia, R2D2, C3PO, or the guys who attack Luke in the Mos Eisley bar.
That was stupid.
What the fuck are they doing on that planet?
That was stupid.
Like, well, no, it also doesn't make sense because I swear to God, we'll get back onto the Last Jedi in a moment. But we see C3PO and R2D2 in the Rebel base as the ship takes off. That's Princess Leia's on. Like, should they be on that ship? Should those droids be on that ship in space right now? Otherwise, I do hope can't happen.
To be fair, in that scene, it was like as everyone was leaving the base, so they probably went on the ship. It was just like this weird 5-second, like, oh look, they're here because they're in the movie. Okay, bye.
Cameo, completely pointless. I mean, you could even argue you could remove Darth Vader from that movie. He doesn't add that much to it.
Maybe, but his two scenes are so good. I don't care.
His first scene has the worst pun in film history.
Hey,
what's the pun? I forget.
It's when he's force choking that guy, and he says, "Don't choke on your ambitions." Like, fuck you, Darth Vader. Fuck you.
He's just having a good time. You know, he sits in that castle all day. He stares out. He watches the place where he almost burned to death because why
would he make his castle where he like the most painful experience I'm sure of his life? Why would he make his castle there?
Because the dark side, you feed on pain and suffering, and so that's the most painful moment in his life. You know, that's where last time he saw Natalie. Why can't I think of her name? No, that's
Padme.
no.
Yeah.
Like that's where he last saw Padme. David. That's where Obi-Wan. That's where he essentially became Darth Vader.
As a writer yourself, would you say the most painful experience of his life is that when his physical body is burnt, or when he wakes up, I believe maybe on the Death Star or on the Star Destroyer, where he is told he murdered his wife and unborn children?
Well,
couldn't you argue that's the moment? You know, yes, screaming, no, notwithstanding, that's the moment where that's the most painful moment of Anakin Skywalker's existence.
Yeah, but that's all connected to the events that occur on Mustafar. That's where his entire destiny changes. I mean, because he lands there, he's like, I've got a lady, she's got a kid kicking around. I'm gonna fix the universe, and Palpatine's gonna help me. And then next thing he knows, he's on fire. He's missing more than just his limbs. Next thing he
knows, after a 45-minute lightsaber battle,
it's a very long lightsaber battle.
He should have had the high ground.
That's why he built the castle so high, so he would always have the high ground after that
point. He has the high ground over lava. Fuck you, lava. You won't get me again.
Yeah, that's why when Krennic, he choked him, he fell to the ground. He's like, see, still high. And you couldn't see it through the mask, but he winked when he said the pun. And that's why Rogue One is the best movie. But
So speaking of dark and depressing, Kylo Ren.
Oh.
I love the fact that he's still a whiny little man-child.
That's why he's the best Star Wars villain.
Yeah,
because he's just a whiny kid who's a tryhard.
Well, he's the opposite of Luke. Instead of being whiny and light, he's whiny and dark.
I love the scene when he first confronts Snoke at the beginning, and he has the mask on. He's trying to speak, and it's like so completely terribly muddled. And he's just like, "Get that fucking thing off your face."
And then Snoke's just like, "Listen, mate, you're just a whiny little child in a mask. Fuck off." And then he cries and destroys his mask in the elevator. That was a good moment. Cause, it kind of carries on all of his temper tantrums from Force Awakens, which again, like, Darth Vader, I think, he's a well, you wouldn't say more interesting character. I think he's a better character in some regards because you always know what he's about. But Kylo Ren,
He's a more iconic villain.
he's a more iconic villain, but also like you don't have to like the mark of a good character. Someone argues that like to a certain extent, you know what he's gonna do. I mean, obviously you don't really suspect that in Jedi he's gonna he's gonna kill the Emperor, but like you know what Darth Vader's motivations, what his goals are. A lot of times with Kylo Ren, it's like I have no idea what the fuck this whiny kid's gonna do, but I can't wait to see what he does. You know?
I mean, we don't know that many Darth Vaders in our life. We know a lot of Kylo Rens. We know a lot of Ben Solos.
Right, because it's right because in The Force Awakens he's established as pretty much the ultimate Vader fanboy. He only wears a mask because he's cosplaying, and so it's like. Okay, since this is technically a channel inspired by Sonic the Hedgehog, like let's say you're the Sonic fanboy, you grew up with the classics, you're having a grand old time,
Yeah.
and then Snoke shows up and he hands you Sonic 06 and you realize that everything in your life is a lie, and so you take that disc and you smash it against a wall and you take off
You
your
mean
Sonic
Infinite?
hat.
So yeah,
Infinite is just Kylo Ren.
Infinite is a more competent version of Kylo Ren.
Right down to wearing the mask for no
He
reason.
wears them because he is not weak. Damn it, Kylo Ren is not weak.
Right. But because Snoke, who has sort of became his like that's his other father figure. Well, that's his father figure, right?
He's his emperor.
Again, that's a big thing, and anyone who's on the FTCI Discord, Stefan and I went back a few times. Snoke, I have big issues with Snoke in terms of where the fuck he came from. Now I know, and Stefan's big thing is that, and I agree with you in this regard. Stefan, his counter argument is we don't know anything about the Emperor, and I agree with that. But in the context of that original trilogy, we know enough about the Jedi Order and all this happened, and the fact that they're called the Empire, you can infer there is some kind of Emperor, and it clearly isn't Darth Vader because in Force Awakens he's second in command. You could argue to Grand Moff Tarkin. And then in
you mean A New Hope?
I'm sorry. So yeah, A New Hope. He takes orders from Grand Moff Tarkin, and so the fact you can imply there is some kind of person at the head of this, and the fact that he's a Jedi kind of contradicts A New Hope, because there was a moment in A New Hope when Grand Moff Tarkin says to Darth Vader, "You are the last of your kind," which they should know the Emperor is a Jedi, but George Lucas was literally making this up as he went along. So what have you?
Yeah,
The
everyone was.
thing,
I-
no, David, let me
Yeah.
just get what my issue with Snoke is.
Mm-hmm.
If this new trilogy was set 1,000 years in the future, or like 100 years in the future, and like Luke was already dead, and the Jedi's were thought to be extinct and all that, I would accept who Snoke is more. But the fact is, it's only been 30 years,
Right.
and now we have this powerful. He's not called a Sith, but let's just, because of what he does, he clearly uses the Force, and he's evil, and he's got a fucked up face, just like the Emperor. we can infer he's a Sith, okay? And it's like the prequel said, there's always two, a master and an apprentice. Snoke is the master, Kylo Ren is the apprentice. Where the fuck did he come from? And also, it's the fact that there's also a moment where Luke says, "I am like the Jedi, like need to end, die, and they'll die with me." But in one of the flashbacks where he talks about the nights where shit went wrong with Kylo Ren, he has a line that stuck out to me. He says, "Snoke already had him." Like, how? Like, explain that. How the fuck did Snoke? Where did Snoke come from? And like, how did he like seduce Kylo Ren? Or Ben Solo, I guess at that point. It's small things like that, which again, in the grand scheme of the Star Wars, I guess this new trilogy, I guess we're not meant to really give a fuck. But I'm just thinking, like, because it's such an integral, Snoke apparently is such an integral part to Kylo Ren's backstory and why he is who he is. The fact that we're just like, what the fuck is he? Where did he come from? To me, it's just like it. I won't say it ruins my enjoyment of the movie, but I like watching Last Jedi. I spent several minutes thinking, okay, like when are we gonna find out where he came from? Like I don't need to know why his face is fucked up. And like that stuff to me, I don't give a shit about. Like why his face is deformed and shit. I just need to know where the fuck he came from and how he got to know Ben Solo, and that would just clear up. Like it would have taken 2 lines of dialogue to explain that shit.
Here's the thing that I think is important regarding Snoke and Kylo Ren and all them is that the film ends up like saying that the whole point of it is that the Jedi and the Sith are gone. There's no more Jedi, no more Sith, and that the whole reason that they want to start up again with their own quote-unquote factions. So essentially Kylo Ren, he wants to be a Sith, he wants to be like Darth Vader, but at this point he realizes that we don't need to be a Sith, he can just be a quote-unquote evil Force user. Which I think that's what the whole thing of with Snoke is supposed to be, is that he's not supposed to be a Sith. Like, he doesn't follow, like, the Sith rules.
Well,
he doesn't come from the Sith.
Stefan, like, if he decides not to be called a Sith, that's fine. I don't give a... Like, that to me is inconsequential. But where the fuck did he come from?
I feel like because the film, like, states that the Force, like, there's so many people, like, the Force is in everyone, and anybody can have the Force, like, even, like, all the kids, like, the kids that Luke said that he was training, and the kid at the end of the movie who uses the Force to get the broom.
Yeah.
It's so... What it assumes is that Snoke was just a random guy who got the Force and decided, I'm gonna fuck shit up.
But that's fucking lazy storytelling. If that was entirely Rian Johnson / JJ, well, I see Rian Johnson because
that would be.
If I remember,
he
went on record saying that everything set up from Force Awakens has not been planned out. So there wasn't like a much. He get to come up with everything. If that was really what Rian Johnson intends us to just that he's just some random fuckwit who knows the Force and somehow got in contact with Ben Solo, that's fucking lazy as shit script writing.
Well, what I think is that I don't think that's exactly what Snoke's whole backstory is. What I think Rian Johnson was doing is that he's like, Snoke isn't important to my story. My story is about Rey and Kylo Ren and their conflicting feelings about the Force and how the world should essentially be, and that Snoke is really just there as a threat.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, and again, like the spoiler of Kylo Ren killing him, I was fine with, but when you have a character who is instrumental in Kylo Ren being who he is, and he's immediately responsible for the connection Kylo and Rey have in this movie, he was painfully underwritten to me.
And I feel like how the film used it, because we're so used to so many films having the super big bad who's in the shadows and does absolutely nothing until the end, where he's suddenly like becomes super important. Cough, Thanos. So the fact that the film just straight up goes like, this guy, he's not important, we kill him off in the middle of the movie, having people go, what the fuck? And now we get Rey and Kylo. Now we get Kylo Ren basically being like, I don't have to follow orders from this guy anymore. I'm my own man, and shit gets worse from there because he has no idea what he's doing.
Again, Stefan, I get that, but it's like none of your counter arguments directly reference what I'm saying, dude. Like you were just
right.
I'm saying thing A, and you're just bringing up B, C, and D. Like you were not countering what I'm saying at all. You're saying, well, it doesn't matter because X, Y, and Z.
I think okay, because Stefan, you're talking. What you're talking about, like Rian Johnson, he's focusing on like Kylo and Rey and all of that, and like the fact you get Kylo, who essentially does what Vader wasn't able to do in the original trilogy, which is he takes down the Emperor, like, because it's always the thing where you have the master and the apprentice kills the master and he becomes the master, and that's the whole rule of two thing, and that's like a whole bunch of Sith backstory lore and why that exists, and we don't know if that really is how it works with Snoke, because he's not technically a Sith. But as for like the idea of just in this movie we don't get a lot of who Snoke is, and I think the way the film is structured, what's more important in this particular film is not who like where Snoke came from or who he is, but it's more the relationship between Ben Solo and Luke Skywalker, and that's why we focus on the three interpretations of the
betrayal
of
scene,
the flashback, which is the first time that we've actually seen a proper flashback. And so then what happens is that Snoke, he takes the role of the Emperor in the original trilogy, and the reason, like in the original three films, we didn't need to know the backstory. That's what the prequels were for, that explain who the Emperor was and how he seduced Anakin and all of that. So in a way, it feels like that the sequel trilogy, like if it was named episodes 10, 11, and 12, I feel like this argument wouldn't happen at all, because you have this huge gap of 30 years,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Well,
and
actually, I would argue 30 years isn't that big of a gap for all this stuff to happen. I mean, I honestly would have preferred. I actually would have preferred it if this was just set like 100 years in the future, like a brand new cast.
Right. Well, because there is sort of a disconnect between the sequel trilogy and the original that you didn't get between the prequels and the original, because the prequels end with, okay, the Empire is starting up. You don't need to know the next 19 years to get a sense. The sequel trilogy, like the role of The Force Awakens was, it's sort of a soft reboot where we're kind of back in the same place. And it's like, that's why...
In terms of Han Solo, he's literally back where he was in New Hope.
And that's why it shouldn't... Like, that probably shouldn't have been episode 7. It should have been episode 10, because then that promises 3 other movies that explain what went on with Luke, Han, and Leia, and Ben, and whatever else they were dealing with, and the formation. And instead, you just get little bits and pieces in so far in these books that have come out. Because there's the Aftermath trilogy, which is the year after Jedi, which sort of explains what happens with the Empire right after.
Are those
there's a
canon?
book called...
Yep.
Yeah, well, the Aftermath trilogy is canon. The book Bloodlines, which stars Princess Leia, like, that's also canon. That was that had
all
input
of the
from
books
Rian Johnson,
and all of the comics are canon.
yeah.
So-
Anything post the Disney sales.
Yeah, post Disney.
So,
yeah.
Gotcha.
So the Bloodlines book is something that most people aren't going to read, but that is probably the best way to get a sense of where the galaxy is politically, because that starts with Leia, and she's part of the Senate of the New Republic, and like there's Han Solo, who is still her husband, and he's doing things that aren't smuggling, but you don't get, and you just have hints of what's going on with Ben and Luke, because they're not part of the story. Luke's off somewhere, he's doing his training, and in that story there's also the moment where the galaxy at large finds out that Leia and Luke are the children of Darth Vader, which is something that nobody knew. In the old EU, everyone knew but didn't care. And when you think about it, a lot of people would, like, if you found out, oh, one of the main leaders of the new government is the daughter of the tyrannical monster who is running around in black and killing everyone, you might have second thoughts. You know, like, and that's why she was sort of put off to the side. And also, you find out in that book that the First Order is kind of like, they're in the shadows. They're kind of considered a joke. They're not considered a threat, because there's no sense that they are amassing all of this power. The big move they do in The Force Awakens, that's the first time that they make it known that they are going to be this galactic power. That's why they destroy Hosnian Prime in The Force Awakens with Starkiller Base. They wipe out the government right away. And so then in the crawl...
They blew up not Coruscant.
Right, no, they didn't blow up Coruscant. That's not Coruscant. It's
So,
Hosnian Prime.
So, David, question about that then.
Yes.
Because I seem to remember, because it's been about a week or so since I've seen Last Jedi. I think at the start of Last Jedi,
Yeah.
there was like a bit of dialogue to explain why the Resistance is called the Resistance when they're technically in power. I forget, why is that? Why are they called the Resistance again?
Well, because the Resistance is a splinter group that was supported by certain members of the New Republic, but they weren't technically the New Republic. Leia was disgraced. She had left the government. And, like, this is stuff that's unfortunately in a book. And it would be nice if some of it was hinted at in the 3 films as a whole.
Well, I'm saying, like, Force Awakens needed to have, like, again, you could have had just a handful of small dialogue.
Yeah.
Because, like, I remember that's one of the biggest thing that a lot of people I know would be like, why are they called the Resistance? Aren't these guys in power? Like, you can't be the Resistance if you're the bigger force in the galaxy.
it is kind of funny. Like I know like the whole criticism is like there is like merit to it, but it is kind of funny how the biggest complaint, well, one of the biggest complaints about the prequels was too much politics talk, and now one of the complaints about the sequel trilogy is not enough politics talk.
But
You can't win.
right, because in the original trilogy there was talk
There were
of
no
politics.
politics.
Because you have that scene where they're all on the Death Star. Tarkin walks in. He's like, the old remnants of the Republic have been swept away. The Senate has been disbanded. Like,
Which is funny because he says in New Hope, Tarkin says the Emperor has just abolished the Senate. But it's like, what the fuck has the Senate been doing in the last 19 years since Palpatine took it over?
Well, I think there's the sense is that, Palpatine. Well, if you read the original novelization of the first Star Wars film, there is this nice little page and a half prelude, which is basically an outline of the prequels, which is really neat. And in that, it explains that, like, okay, the Emperor takes power and he basically shuts himself away, and he just has a bunch of bootlickers surrounding him, and, like, he's not interested in, running a government, the day-to-day politics. He is just interested in amassing a whole bunch of power and letting the Sith win, which is what he did, and then he sits and it's just like, I'm going to be evil. And I think that's why most people don't really know that he is a Sith, just like most people don't realize that Darth Vader was Anakin Skywalker. There's a lot of, like, secrets going on there. So you have Darth Vader running around calling himself the Lord of the Sith, but you don't have Palpatine running around calling himself Darth Sidious, which is one of the neat things about the prequels, because if you strip away the bad acting and the terrible love story and all this and that, there's actually
I hate sand.
Yeah, well, look, if he said that line better, like if Harrison Ford said "I hate sand," I think we all would have loved that line.
No, he would have said, "I know."
He's like,
I hate sand. I know.
it gets all over in my Millennium Falcon. But yeah, no, it's
When was Han Solo played by Clint Eastwood, David?
I couldn't. I was trying to do. I abandoned that.
You feeling lucky, sand?
I abandoned that quickly, as you can tell. No, but yeah, no, but the prequels tell this great story about how this guy basically, like, overthrows the entire government and puts himself in power by doing a whole bunch of sneaky machinations, which is
Palpatine's behind it.
right, which is completely the opposite of what the First Order did, where we're blowing things up and then we're smashing in. And one of the things that bothers me a little bit about The Last Jedi is that, like, in the crawl, it says, oh man, the First Order's going everywhere. But then you have this chase scene, and it would have been nice if at some point, like Hux mentioned, that they can't get any reinforcements because they're stretched thin, because since they made such a splash and immediately lost Starkiller Base, all of their resources are scattered across the galaxy because they have to take over everything at once, otherwise they're not going to get anywhere. Or
I assume that's what it was.
Yeah, like, I think
was that because you essentially had all of the Resistance versus all of the First Order.
Right. Like, I think it would have been neat to just kind of point that out, because another thing which I was thinking about is that you don't see a lot of stormtrooper action in this film, which is like they're running around on the bait, like, once Finn and Rose show up, but like they don't do a whole lot, which is a little weird. But that's not what I was talking. I was focusing on
considering most of it is like space battles or stuff.
Right.
Or stuff off of the main ship.
Right,
it makes sense that there isn't that many stormtroopers.
Because technically in The Force Awakens, there wasn't an actual battle in space. It was all in atmosphere. There was no space battle in that film.
There was the battle above the Starkiller Base, like
but they're like pretty much in the, like, they're barely. There's barely space.
Not actually in space. Yeah, they're like above the planet.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
But yeah, no. But I was also going to say, like, another line that might have helped is if maybe someone mentioned that Snoke was telling them, yeah, just shoot at them, because Snoke is trying to figure out where Luke Skywalker is, right? And if he kills the entire Resistance, there's no reason for Rey to show up again. And he's doing this whole, like, oh, I'm having Rey and Kylo talk to each other. So it's kind of in Snoke's best interest to not kill everyone immediately so that he can get Rey on board. Once Rey's on board and he finds out where Luke is, all bets are off. But he doesn't give the order to, hey, now you can kill everyone all at once because he dies before he can do that. Instead, it's that like slow picking off thing. So like it kind of makes sense. It just would have been nice if it was a bit more explicitly stated as to why.
I don't know about that because what's it, Commander Hux? He
Yeah.
like his goal is just we're gonna blow him up. He doesn't say we have to wait until one of us tells us where Skywalker is.
Right, I know. That's what I'm saying. It would make it better if that was his motivation.
Did anyone think going into it, the Last Jedi would be 60% the slowest fucking chase scene ever put on cinema?
Well, I did see someone.
It turned into Space Mad Max Fury Road.
Because Space Mad Max is interesting to look at. It's like they're very slowly getting away, and we're very slowly following them.
Right. Well, I know they do say that the resistance ships are slightly faster when they're not in light speed, and I guess sort of the thing is that if the Star Destroyer tracked them through light speed, but if the Star Destroyer jumped into light speed to jump ahead of them, then maybe they wouldn't be able to follow the resistance ship because that would give them just enough of a window to escape. I mean, that's like conjecture that you can put together, and I know like that stuff isn't explicitly stated, which makes me wonder. I mean, it's possible that it was in a deleted scene, or the novelization might get into it a little bit, because the Star Wars novelizations always do explain certain things that were in the script or were taken out, which explain some things that are considered plot holes otherwise.
Yeah, I think the best one is in the Revenge of the Sith novelization, where it implies newborn baby Leia like recognizes the fact that that's her mother, just to make up for the fact that in Return of the Jedi, Leia says she remembers her birth mother looking sad.
I prefer what the comics did, where she gets like visions of her mother.
Yeah.
She gets like force visions of her, which I think works like a lot better.
Which is like
that.
Either George Lucas should have said, I'm not going to kill Padme," or just have Leia think about her adoptive mother. You could have easily done that, but instead they were like, no,
Mrs.
no.
Jimmy Smits.
George Lucas doesn't like think a lot of time. Like the scene when they're like the scene when Obi-Wan picks up Anakin's lightsaber before he leaves Mustafar. He forgot to shoot that scene, so they had to do it in reshoots.
Your father would have wanted this as he was screaming, "I hate you" at me. He was thinking, you know what?
He was a good friend.
Right. Oh, man. But I will say, complete tangent, I want an Obi-Wan film. I want Ewan McGregor to be in a film that takes place between 3 and 4.
Just that when Yoda showed up, who here expected a CG Alec Guinness to also appear? I was so expecting that to happen.
I did not, because knowing how much Alec Guinness hated Star Wars, I would assume whoever is in charge of his estate, if they respected his will in any way, shape, or form, they would not have approved it. So, like when Grand Moff Tarkin was, when the CG Grand Moff Tarkin was in Rogue One, there's a credit at the end that says like with thanks to the Peter Cushing estate. Mm-hmm. So obviously Disney had to get approval from his family or whoever's in charge of his likeness or what have you. Again, if whoever's in charge of Alec Guinness, if they want to respect hit the honor of him, would not have said yes to more stuff. I mean, that's why when you get to Return of the Jedi, most of the time he's on screen, he's sitting on a fucking log. Because he could not give less of a fuck about these movies. I will say though, Yoda being on screen made me cry.
Puppet Yoda!
Because I was just like when we had Frank Oz. Because Frank Oz doesn't do any of like the TV shows or cartoons. He's only ever in the movies. When they had Yoda
he was in Rebels.
Was he in Rebels? Frank Oz was in Rebels?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
But when Puppet Ghost Yoda said young Skywalker, I was like, fucking Yoda. It's the real Yoda, not the fucking jumping Ninja Turtle prequel bullshit Yoda. It's fucking real Yoda's back. And then I love when he does a down B Pikachu move and just destroys that tree.
Well, now we know
Luke's just like, you stole my kill. I was gonna burn that.
Like he goes to burn it, and again we are jumping on all over the place. But there's a moment where after Rey has left Luke's island, and we'll get to Luke Skywalker because I fucking loved everything to do with him. when Rey leaves, Luke is like, there's that famous bit in the trailer. Where he's like, the Jedi's need to die. Luke is like, I'm gonna destroy these sacred books that have never been seen or mentioned before in the movies, but whatever. He goes to destroy him, and then he has this moment of like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't. And then Yoda's like, fuck this, that just blows up the tree. And Luke's like, what the fuck did you do? The sacred Jedi books. Like, you were just gonna destroy them, Luke.
Yeah.
No, and I love his like. Have you even read them?
Page turners, they are not. Is I believe what Yoda says.
That's now like a top 10 best Yoda line.
Page turners, like the fact that Yoda uses the word page turner, I find immensely charming. But that stuff was great. I mean, that. I think one thing I will give Ryan Johnson over definitely Rogue One and to a certain extent Force Awakens, the callbacks and bringing back up old characters. It feels a lot more organic in this.
Yeah, like,
and again, the reason why I think it makes it to a certain extent it makes more sense for Yoda to come back is because Yoda is the one who trained Luke. Technically, Obi-Wan didn't. Like, Obi-Wan gave him like an hour of training on the Millennium Falcon, but like Yoda was his teacher. So I think even if Alec Guinness was around, I still think it makes more sense in context of this moment for it to be Yoda to appear before Luke.
Yeah, and also because you also have the scene where Rey and Kylo confront Snoke, and that whole scene right from the elevator up is pretty much just a reflection of the scene from Return of the Jedi.
You say,
but just with that final twist.
You say reflection, I say stolen from Return of the Jedi.
Reflection, as in like copy, like they purposefully copied it, but they did that for a reason because they make you think that it's going to go exactly the same like it was in Return of the Jedi. Nope, stab.
It's a thing where it's like I've seen a lot of people talk about the like controversial twist this movie takes. So much of this story is just taken from other movies. Like the fact that they're on the run, the entire movie you could argue is like Empire, where the Millennium Falcon spends a lot of that movie on the run from a Star Destroyer. The final assault at the end of the movie is almost like the attack on Hoth at the beginning of Empire. There's like so many moments. The casino scene, and we'll get to the fucking casino planet, is like it's something that's like something out of the prequels. It is so not Star Wars that I was like, did George Lucas come up with this idea? Because it's so terrible.
Hey, I made Star Wars. I don't know what you're saying. If I made it, it's Star Wars. I don't know who are you? The real? What's this? Force the Awakens? You're not. I don't know. Are you?
Force the Awakens.
I will say that I think there's some issues I have. But again, like, so what do you guys think are these big controversial moments that? Because I honestly can't think of what. I mean, again, like there's things in this movie I didn't love, but I think the people who are calling for this movie to be stricken from canon while leaving the prequels intact, kind of stupid.
I think I know why, because I even asked right when I finished watching the movie, I'm like, okay, what was controversial about this? Like I couldn't even figure it out. But then some people told me, and I kind of realized is that Force Awakens, and namely internet culture in general, has made us all really theory heavy. Like we come up with so many different theories. We come up with so many different theories of who this character is, what this character's backstory is, what's going to happen next.
Snoke is Freddy Fazbear, and what?
And Rey's parents are
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Turtles.
No, seriously, there were people who thought that Snoke was Mace fucking Windu. And that Rey's father was Obi-Wan Kenobi. If those things would have been true, that would have made this worse than the prequels. The notion that Snoke is Mace Windu is worse than fucking Anakin Skywalker making C-3PO. That is how bad of an idea that is.
Well, Obi-Wan couldn't have been Rey's father. He would have been her grandfather. Look at the timeline.
Again, dude, people wanted father. People wanted
he
wanted
was
her to
dead.
be
That means he would have had to conceive in
Force
death.
Ghost.
He would have had a Force Ghost sex. People complain about Yoda making lightning. I think they would have complained more about Obi-Wan Kenobi making Force sperm. Force sperm.
Well, to be fair,
is what happened with Anakin.
Yeah, Anakin was
Are
made.
you saying
Anakin
that
was
Obi-Wan
virgin
Kenobi
birth.
went back in time slept with Shmi.
No, I'm saying that Obi-Wan Kenobi, 15 years after he died, had forced sex with someone.
But the thing is, like, the only character, the only pre-created character that would have made sense for Snoke to be would be Darth Plagueis, and
But he's
even
dead!
then, no, but well, like he could be, but I don't know, but.
Well,
You know the whole like rule, like the whole rule is that, oh, he's so powerful he could have survived. Like,
well,
we don't-
George Lucas said that Darth Plagueis was a Mun, which is a species that we saw in the Clone Wars, and Snoke does not look like that alien species, so obviously.
like but here's also the thing is that I feel like if they were to make him Darth Plagueis, it would kind of be like a what do you like a Khan moment in Star Trek Into Darkness, like, oh, this only makes sense like if he says I am Darth Plagueis.
No,
no.
I mean, kind of, but it's because Darth Plagueis is such a kind of throwaway scene in Revenge of the Sith. I don't mean I get what you're saying, but I don't think you can, because Khan is such a big name in the Star Trek franchise. I think Darth Plagueis has just become a meme over the last few years. That people like to say, like, in the grand scheme of the prequels, like when Revenge of the Sith first came out, I don't remember anyone giving a fuck about Darth Plagueis. It was just a scene so Palpatine could seduce Anakin with like here's these things that you could possibly do.
I think it was the book, the James Luceno book called Darth Plagueis that came out. That's what, because a lot of people consider that one of the best EU books. When people say, oh, you got to read Star Wars books, this is before the reset of canon. It was always the Thrawn trilogy, and then they would and then you got to read Darth Plagueis. And that
the only one I have is the one where Chewbacca gets crushed by a small moon and dies, and I was like, nah, I'm good, never again.
Yeah, I was watching a YouTube comment. Whoa, why is my phone?
George Lucas is attacking David.
No, there was a YouTube commenter whose name I'm not going to mention. He was saying that Chewbacca's death in that book was more epic than the way Luke Skywalker died in this film.
I'm gonna say nope. Used in every sense of the word. I can't use a stronger word than no to express how wrong you are.
I just don't understand how Luke oh man, Chewie got hit by a moon. No. See, because I know
that's no space station. That's a moon.
Right. There are a faction of people who refuse to watch any new movie because all of that canon was wiped away.
The thing about that though is that George Lucas himself never gave a fuck about it. George Lucas himself always said, like, but before when Lucas owned it,
right,
from his own mouth, he said like, really, there are two universes. The movies with like the cartoons he worked on, so both versions of Clone Wars. It's like
well, now the 2D Clone Wars isn't canon. Just
yeah, but like at the time it was like Lucas was like, it's, you know, the 6 movies, the 2 Clone Wars cartoons are canon, and then there's a separate universe where all the books and shit are canon and all the video games. So even Lucas was like, they aren't really canon, like, because Lucas never gave, when he was writing like his stuff, he never gave a fuck about what was in those books.
Right.
Like, he did not give a fuck.
Right.
And also because, like, if they kept all the EU canon, then how was Disney going to make their own stories? It's like, well, there's already like all this, like, oh, we what was it? Han and Leia already have like these own kids, but we want to make our own like character like with that story. It makes sense why they want to get rid of everything, because now it gives them all this extra space to make new stories.
It would have made people unhappy either way, because...
yeah.
No, I was just going to say, because if they just said every single book is canon, then you are left with, like, a Han and Leia whose 2 out of their 3 kids are dead.
Chewie's got crushed by a small moon.
Right. Mara Jade was dead at that point. And then if you're like, oh, well, everything after this point is not canon, then that's still going to piss certain people off, because that's like a decade and a half of stories aren't canon. And so, I mean, it would have made people... And also, like you were saying, yeah, George Lucas, if he had been in charge of the sequel trilogy, it still would have completely deviated from all of those works. in the Art of the Last Jedi book that came out the same day as the movie, there is concept art from George Lucas' original pitch of Episode 7, which is about a female would-be Jedi who is named Kira at the time, and she goes to a small island in the middle of nowhere where Luke Skywalker is, and he's going to, and like she seeks him out because he's gone into hiding, and then he proceeds to train her for some reason. Now, they don't go into all the details because either they won't reveal what George Lucas's original outlines were until after the sequel trilogy is done, or they won't say what it was until they have mined every single idea he ever put to paper.
Well, yeah, because it sounds like it sounds like Ryan Johnson just stole that idea for Razor Arc for most of this movie.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, technically that was at the end of Force Awakens anyway. Like that was what that set up. So.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like the notion, yeah, I'm like there is a way to tell this story where there's no training. Like where Luke doesn't have to train Rey, but it's
Right.
so I wonder how much of that information, because I'm going to assume the people who work on this stuff, and especially JJ coming back for number 9. So had Lucas planned out 7, 8, and 9, or just 7?
Well,
7, 8. He planned out he said that he had planned out a sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
But I forget that was he ever planning to make it? So say
Yes.
Disney never buys Star Wars. Was Lucas still planning to make a sequel trilogy at some point?
Yeah, there's this running theory because at the same, because as the Clone Wars animated series is being done, Lucasfilm was also working on a live action Star Wars
the TV
series.
show.
Yeah.
Star Wars Underworld, which
Which he wrote all the scripts for.
well, he didn't write them.
Well, yeah, but isn't it
he didn't
like
write them himself. He had this whole team of
there's
people
like
from like
there's like 60 finished scripts for this TV show, and there was also that but looked terrible like comedy show from the Robot Chicken guys,
yeah.
but
which
that's something else
episodes
entirely.
leaked online,
Yeah.
and it's fucking horrendous.
Right. No. I guess what the thought was. So while they were trying to figure out how to make this show cheaply, because it was like they were expecting up to 100 hours of television. They had 50 scripts written out. They kept on saying, "Oh, it's going to be characters you don't know," but then writers who worked on it have gone on to say, "Oh no, I wrote an episode which was about Palpatine," and somebody said, "Oh, I wrote an episode where Han wins the Falcon from Lando." Like they were going to show these events in that show, so they would probably be like, "Oh wow, here's someone you know." I guess Lucas was trying to buy a piece of land or maybe he already owned the land, but build a film studio on it. So he would have all these massive sound stages, which he would then be able to begin production on the live action series, plus these 3 the sequel films. And so he was going to do it all at once. That's why, like, he's the one who hired Michael Arndt, the guy who wrote Toy Story 3. He was the one that wrote the Episode 7 script. Lucas had written the treatment for what the sequel trilogy, like, I guess what the beats would be. But that's always sort of malleable, because if you read any treatment of a Star Wars film, there's usually significant differences between the original concept and what even went to paper. Like, even The Phantom Menace...
Luke Starkiller.
Yeah, even The
Well, yeah,
Phantom
well, I mean,
Menace
like,
has a
it's-
lot of differences between his original concept and what it finally hit
Well, I
the
mean,
screen.
hell, if years ago Dark Horse released a 8-book comic book series, The Star Wars, based on the original outline for A New Hope.
Yeah.
It's pretty different.
It's an-
So why
it's an
did
interesting story.
So David, why? So then, if Lucas had all these plans, cause I haven't looked up on this because I didn't really care, to be honest. But like, so why did Lucas end up selling if he had all these plans?
Right. Well, he had all these plans, but I think what ended up happening is the studio that he wanted to build, he wasn't able to get the right get the right permits or whatever. Like it was sort of dead in the ground, so he would have had to start from scratch somewhere else. And I think because he is an older man, realizing that he would have to devote another decade of his life to making these 3 films. He had just gotten married. He had just had a kid. Like, he's having new kids really late in life. I think the fact that you have Bob Iger sitting in whispering in his ear, "Hey, we'll buy Star Wars and we'll take good care of it." It just seemed like
$4 billion.
So you're saying in this story, Bob Iger is Salacious Crumb? Okay.
He's Bob Iger's Snoke.
oh, there you go. Now you figured out where he came from. That's it. Yeah, and because I think when it was originally sold, because Lucas has always been a fan of Disney and animation, like he's a film buff, he's a film historian, he's very into animation and all that sort of thing. Like,
I mean, Lucas originally created Pixar.
yeah, and I think Jar Jar Binks was like an inspiration of old Hollywood. Maybe didn't quite hit the right way, but
The wrong kind of old Hollywood.
Right. But yeah, because originally when it was sold, I think the idea was, George Lucas would help steer it, but he wouldn't be the director, he wouldn't be the main writer, but he would be an involved consultant. And then what ended up happening was Michael Arndt's script was thrown out, and JJ teamed up with Lawrence Kasdan, and everyone was like, oh man, Lawrence Kasdan, because he wrote Empire and Jedi and
then
Raiders
Disney
of the
pretty
Lost
much
Ark.
told Lucas to go fuck himself.
Well, because I guess the story was one day George Lucas got a package in the mail, and it was from JJ. He was like, hey, we wrote the script. Tell me what you think. And he was like, what? Because he thought that he would be involved in this process. And then I think at that moment he realized that Star Wars wasn't his anymore. And so he just sort of let it go. And I know that
the slavers comment.
Yeah, because I think even...
Oh yeah, that was like I wanted to fucking smack Lucas for that comment. Jesus Christ.
But, well, and also because he's been like very off and on. Like he sometimes he was like, "Oh, I didn't really want to be involved in it," but then at the same time he's also like, "Oh, but I'm upset they didn't use any of my ideas."
Well,
And
that's what happens
like
when you
this
sell it. Like if you didn't want to, if you wanted to be involved, then just license it out to Disney. Don't sell it to them because then they don't need to do anything.
And as far as I know, he was the one who said Kathleen Kennedy should be in charge of Lucasfilm. So,
And that's working out great so far.
Yeah, I mean...
Financially it is, but when you
financially,
but when you effectively replace two of your directors out of 4 movies, that doesn't look, and the reason is always creative differences. That doesn't bode well for people wanting to. I mean, it's Star Wars. People will line up to work on this franchise, but you're gonna turn away people who have some kind of artistic vision when they hear that you can't do anything because it might go against the Lucasfilm like creed, which to me, again, like I am by far not the first person to say this. But The Last Jedi is full of, in my opinion, terrible fucking jokes and really bad comedy. So the fact that Lord and Miller were fired from Han Solo for making it too funny, like what the fuck were they doing that The Last Jedi was fine, but like Han Solo was too goofy.
Of all the changes and all the like quote unquote like too much changes and differences that The Last Jedi took, like. Lord and Miller's Solo film was too weird for Lucasfilm. Although I think it also has to do with
they said too funny. Like one of the reasons they said it, they said they were making the Han Solo movie too funny. Look at Last Jedi. Last Jedi has like Lord and Miller are funny. I guarantee you, what they were doing in Han Solo, or I guess just Solo as it's called now, would be 1,000 times better. Nothing like most of the comedy in Last Jedi made me want to puke.
Supposedly, from what I've heard, is that they were doing a lot of improvising on set, and Lawrence Kasdan was really upset about that. He was like, "Why aren't they using my script? Get rid of them."
That's the thing where you don't hire people who are known for that, and then get pissy when they do it.
I mean, they do this all. That's what they've been like. Rian Johnson is the only director that they've actually let make his movie, because J.J. Abrams had to rush to get Force Awakens out on time. Gareth Edwards got replaced by Tony Gilroy in Rogue One. Colin Trevorrow got replaced with J.J. Abrams. Lord Miller got replaced with Ron Howard. And Josh Trank. I
forgot about Trevorrow. So that's 3 directors that they canned.
To be fair, at least Colin Trevorrow, like that was all like they hadn't started filming yet. They haven't done anything.
True.
No, but they had written a script.
Right, but I mean, you see, in Hollywood, there are plenty of times where scripts are written and things are, like, it seems like they're ready to go, but then it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that they went on stage and said, here's a whole bunch of directors that are going to make a whole bunch of movies because it's Star Wars. They announced everything at once.
And then 3 of them get replaced.
If it was like any other situation, I feel like if it was any other franchise, they wouldn't have made so many announcements so ahead of time. So
DC have done the same thing. They announced so many movies and so many directors, and most of that stuff has changed.
Yeah. So I think
I mean, people give Marvel Studios so much shit for like not having the directors not giving the directors too much control, but especially nowadays compared to what Lucasfilm is doing, they seem a lot better.
Well, the only time when someone was replaced was, I believe, Thor: The Dark World.
No, and Edgar Wright.
Well, I mean, Edgar
Ant-Man.
Wright hadn't started filming. Like Dark World, I believe they had
No,
filmed some stuff.
No, Dark World. Alan Taylor was hired like way before they started filming.
Oh, did okay then? Well, I mean, like I guess
Yeah.
again, Edgar. I mean, like, yeah, and then there's all the issues with Joss Whedon and why he left, because apparently all their interference during
But
Age of
at
Ultron.
least he finished the movie. Like,
He finished, but from what he says, he wasn't happy with, which is why he jumped ship to DC to ruin Justice League. But that's a story for
Just
another day.
yeah, let's not. If we get into Justice League, we're gonna be here all day.
We'll be
because-
here. We've been going for an hour, and we've maybe spent about 10 minutes talking about the actual movie.
Right. Oh, because you're
and
talking about
half of that was on Extended Universe.
okay. You're talking
What
about
happens
okay.
when you get that's what happens when you get David's brain in here.
Well, yeah,
David,
I
David is
get-
the man of a million tangents. I love it so much.
I get very excited when it comes to Star Wars. Star Wars is one of my true loves when it comes to
What's bigger, Star Wars or Sonic?
Oh, jeez. See, now here's the thing. My mother never really had an issue with me being obsessed with Sonic the Hedgehog. My mother tried to actively discourage me from being a fan of Star Wars.
Smart woman. Smart woman.
Well, because
Okay,
yeah.
here. I've got because you brought up the comedy stuff that you hated. Because what was weird to me is that I didn't think there was as much comedy in Last Jedi compared, like, as Force Awakens, there was a lot of, like, the quippy, funny moments and all, like, the scenes that are dedicated just to comedy.
I disagree.
didn't think there
we
was
went over this. I
didn't-
disagree. I think you could make an argument Force Awakens has more one-liners than Last Jedi. Last Jedi has whole fucking scenes that are just there for goofy. Like the film fucking opens with Poe Dameron playing a phone prank on General Hux.
I love that. It's so dumb.
When it happened, I was like, I chuckled, but then I was like, this is so out of place in a Star Wars movie, and I was like, why? It's like does the Imperial forces have holding systems over their intercoms? Like that is a joke for modern day humans. It doesn't make sense in the context of the world Star Wars is placed in, because we have never once seen or like a fucking holding system. So like I'm holding for that made no sense.
Well, I mean, wasn't Han Solo put on hold when he was flying around Cloud City trying to get Lando's attention?
Right, no,
Also,
he wasn't-
boring conversation anyway.
But he was just like,
Well, see,
they kept on putting him in circles.
Stefan, boring conversation anyway is not him being put on hold. It's him ending the conversation.
No, but the call was on hold before. Like before he started, like before he like ended the call.
Right, they
Was it
kept-
on hold?
I thought they kept on putting it. Yeah, I thought it was like he was flying around. He wasn't he was in contact, but they weren't talking to him. And then they would try and talk to him, and then it was just like it's fun stuff. That's what I thought. I could be misremembering.
you know,
And,
I
and
might-
also I think that humor in that scene I felt was like it was similar to the humor in Force Awakens, because I remember seeing that for the first time, and that humor was like very modern-y and compared to what we're used to in like other Star Wars films.
Stefan, I will agree with you there. There were a few moments where specifically lines of dialogue Finn had in Force Awakens felt a bit too modern for me. But Last Jedi, it's almost like Ryan Johnson forgot this is supposed to take place a long time ago. You know, like they're very like, and again, Poe Dameron kind of, and again, I am not the first person to bring this up. Poe Dameron makes a your mama joke when he's on the phone with General. It's like that's not fucking Star Wars. Like that's fucking dumb.
Which when you think about it, it kind of, because like the original Star Wars trilogy was late 70s, early 80s, so that has that kind of sense of humor, and the prequels weren't really that funny, so we don't really have a style of humor to compare that to. So we have like The Force Awakens, which is like so many years after Return of the Jedi, so the style of humor like the style of humor nowadays is a lot different than how it was in the 70s and 80s, so
I think
I can kind of understand why they change it up.
The humor in I think the humor works best in A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, where it's dry. It's like one of
Yeah.
my it's one of my favorite lines in the entire franchise is when Obi-Wan Kenobi just says, "Who's the bigger fool? The fool who follows him." Like that line always sticks to me as being like a nice little like funny line. But like the jokes in so, partly Force Awakens, I will grant you that, but especially in like Last Jedi, the scene when they go to the casino and there's like drunken aliens like fooling around and burping. That's like something out of fucking prequels. That is so goofy and stupid. And also, that whole sequence is completely inconsequential. You can cut that entire sequence and nothing happens to the movie. It's such a waste of time.
I'll agree that the scene goes on a bit too long, but I feel like what the scene stands for, like, I didn't hate the scene, so I didn't mind like that scene happening and going there, but also because I feel like it works in the whole like kind of theme and concept of the film, which is exploring kind of the other side of the Star Wars universe. Like we see like what this these upper middle class side, and how like, oh, the people who are selling the weapons to both sides, and it's like, what does it mean?
That aspect
And we
I
get-
liked. That aspect I like when it's revealed that the good guys also buy from like these rich bastards. Like that was a little moment I liked. But for me, it's just it's the fact with it like we have 18 hours left, we have 6 hours left, we have 3 hours left, and they're still like on this stupid casino planet. Like I think I would have. I don't necessarily hate the notion of going to this planet to find this master save cracker who I don't even meet. It's the fact that in the fact that the resistance is still being very slowly chased by the First Order at the same time. I'm like that was just a plot point I did not really like.
What
The
if
fact that there's this
Finn
very
and-
slow chase going on the entire
like
time.
I think because the like original like I was thinking about it, is that yeah, they're like, you technically could have just had Finn and Rose go onto the ship like themselves,
Yeah.
and then like go into it and then get caught anyway without getting DJ or whatever. But I feel like the reason that they go there is so that you can have we can learn like about Rose and seeing why Rose does what she does, and so that we can also have the scene of them inspiring the kids, which leads into the ending, which is probably going to end up going into like which is what the whole like future and the end of the movie is supposed to be, is that the future of the world, the future of the resistance, the future of the Force, essentially.
that also goes into something to get on a more technical side. The Last Jedi goes against the film language of the established Star Wars movies. They do a lot of things in Last Jedi that have never been done in a Star Wars movie, which in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just took me out of the style of Star Wars. I think one of the biggest things I thought was when Luke is trying to explain what the Force is, and Luke is like feeling around. He's like, it's I feel life and death and greenery and water, and it cuts to like all the things she's talking about. That to me just like those inserts to me feel unnecessary, because it's essentially what she's saying is the same. Technically, it's kind of the same speech that Yoda gives to Luke in Empire Strikes Back. He's like, it surrounds us, binds us. Like I didn't things like those inserts and the extensive use of flashbacks and Ray's weird LSD space, like cave trip, were all filmic devices that have never been used before in context of the Star Wars universe. And again, I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing, but that took that kind of, in a certain extent, those things took me out of the movie.
Well,
In a
Force
way.
Awakens did that too.
I mean, Force Awakens did things slightly. I mean, Force Awakens did a few things like that, but not, I would argue, not to the extent that Jedi does. Which again isn't.
Well, her vision, like the vision scene that she has, like with the thing, I'd say that's basically like what happened. Like her that was basically like her LSD trip and also a flashback.
True, but I think that to me there's more of a narrative reason for that to happen. So like that to me made more sense than just, I'm in this weird cave and we're gonna spend 2 minutes just watching Rey click her fingers, which I was like, this is like the wasted time. Like the visual.
I thought it was a cool effect. I thought it was a cool effect.
I mean, it's a nice effect, but I just think that scene goes on a bit too long. and also the fact that we see her narration, and then ultimately it's a flashback because then it's her telling Luke what happened. Again, it's a very odd way of progressing the story, which is not because again with the if we for a moment take away Force Awakens from the equation, with the exception of Anakin, with the exception of Anakin, with him seeing Padme dying in childbirth, there are no like cutaways or like flashbacks or fast forwards. There's basically we just see everything through the lens of the characters that we are currently watching on screen. You could make the case George Lucas was a very boring filmmaker in how he set up the style for the movies. And again, I get that these are new movies with new directors trying to make things fresh, and I'm sure nobody cares about this than me. And again, it's not even really that big of a negative. It just felt that to a certain extent, it just felt like it's almost like it wasn't a Star Wars movie in some regards, because they're trying to make things look too interesting, kind of in a way. But yeah,
How dare a movie make things look good?
Again, like that is a valid comment. But if you're making a Star Wars movie, I just think that you shouldn't change things up like in that regard. Because again, I didn't care for a lot of the finger clicking and the inserts. I felt were just unnecessary. They didn't add anything. And I thought the story was on Rey's face, rather than we don't need to see her say water and us see some water. That's like that to me. It's almost like Ryan Johnson thinks the audience are a bunch of idiots.
I think though that scene, it wasn't that the fact that they had like those vision things of what she was seeing. I think it was more so the fact that it was stock footage and that you could kind of tell that it was stock footage. That kind of like, this wasn't something they filmed.
Ryan Johnson just went to stockfootage.com and took some footage.
Like that was the thing that drew me out of that scene the most. The actual it happening, it didn't really bother me.
I mean, I think it's because they wanted to present it in a way that was just different from what we had seen before. Because you think about it, you have like Obi-Wan tells Luke what the Force is. Yoda tells Luke what the Force is. They talk about the Force in the prequels, sort of, kind of. I don't know. So if it's just Luke saying the same things again, and like that have already been said in previous films, and it's just him standing there and talking, it's just like that is the ultimate sort of retread. So by having these visuals and kind of showing, like having the close up on Rey, and you can see her reactions, but with everything else, I think it paints it in a way that you hadn't seen it before, and it's just so it isn't Obi-Wan sitting on a log saying, "Hey guys, look, the Force, this is what it is," and Rey just kind of blankly staring at Luke, going, "Yeah, okay, that's what the Force is." And so seeing all that, like, I liked that because it kind of because I think a lot of people. Because even when Rey shows up and Luke asks her, like, what do you think the Force is? And she's like, oh, you can trick people, you can lift rocks. There were a lot of people...
Everything you said was wrong. Right. Everything in that sentence was wrong. That's such a great moment.
Yeah. Because I think there are a lot of people who do think of the Force as just... It's a power that Jedi have, and they can do all these cool stuff, and they forget that that there is a hugely spiritual angle to it. I mean, in the original Star Wars, Tarkin says to Darth Vader that he is the last of that ancient religion, as in like the Sith and the Jedi, like that. Those are considered religions in the Star Wars universe. The Force is considered something spiritual, and I don't. It was just there was something very, very calming and peaceful, and it's still like there's two sides of the Force. There's balance here, but it still does go. Like Luke still says, you like don't just jump into a dark pit. Like you want to stay away from the dark side. And she's like, "Nah, mate, I'm gonna jump in there and see what's up." And maybe
which is the same thing Luke did. I like that. See,
yeah.
There's nothing new in this franchise. It's just constant, just regurgitating of shit we've already seen before.
Rey did what Riku did in Kingdom Hearts. I use both the light and the dark. Holy shit, that is genius.
You know what, David? The small thing when you bring up the Jedi is a religion. There's a moment where I think Laura Dern's character says something like, "May God help us," and it's like because they've never already referenced. She
says
they've never made reference to a deity before. So
they have referenced hell.
Right, Han Solo has said hell, but yes, Laura Dern.
True.
And well, because she says Godspeed Rebels, which is what one of the other captains, I forget if it's the medical frigate, he also says Godspeed Rebels. When I heard that, that's probably to me the worst thing in that film is the fact that they say Godspeed, because
Like, what are they referencing?
well, I mean, that's just, I don't understand why they didn't just say "May the Force be with you," because that's the going phrase. By saying the word God, it seems very odd when like the major driving force of what spirituality and religion is in the Star Wars universe is the Force, and the Force is not considered a specific deity, you know. And
Well, I mean, as Luke says in the movie, like, Jedi's ain't nothing fucking special. Anyone can have the Force.
right, which I think is also like an important thing to because when the original Star Wars came out, there were a lot of people who gravitated towards the idea of here's this farm boy who's just like from nowhere, and then he grows up and he finds out that, hey, he can have this special power, and it's not anything like he can be taught it, so maybe I could be taught it. And
David, I'm sorry, guys, to interject you. The fact that I saw the funniest thing online,
Oh.
where it was like for 40 years we've been calling Luke Skywalker a farm boy, yet people were fucking pictured that he milked an animal and got milk out of it.
Yeah, yes.
yeah.
Okay,
It's like, what?
Look,
What's
I
wrong
love
with that? He
because
was getting milk.
That moment,
has to get a drink.
that moment came the closest to like Rogue One levels of like completely pointless fan insertion. I think what sells it is Luke's face, like what do you fucking think I'm gonna drink? Like he has just look at his face of like what like fuck you, like of course I'm gonna drink this.
It's like I need to survive.
It's like I'm
I'm not gonna drink the salt water.
hanging out here, I'm fishing, I'm drinking, like there's all these weird nuns around me, I don't know what they are.
Yeah, alien.
All these
nuns.
porgs.
Oh man, do you think Luke Skywalker ate a porg?
I mean, Chewbacca almost did.
Chewbacca.
That is true.
Chewbacca killed the porg, but won't even eat it.
Chewbacca killed and skinned a pork.
Right. Well, before we delve too deep into porg, since we are on the topic of Luke Skywalker, because I think one of the main issues that a lot of people have with this film is the characterization of Luke Skywalker.
I loved it.
As he is on the
how dare
island.
he grow as a character
Yeah.
and change?
Right, because when I was watching the film, I did not get the sense that this wasn't Luke Skywalker. He still seemed like Luke Skywalker, and older, slightly crazier, as in he went through some shit, Luke Skywalker. But I like the fact that at the end it all ties together, and he does the most Luke Skywalker thing that you can possibly do. Because
Be lazy and just astral project yourself instead of going somewhere.
well, no. See, the reason I love that is because, okay, because in Return of the Jedi, Luke, he's all, oh, I think I can save Vader. I feel there's some light in my father. I'm going to go try and save him. He goes there, like, he tries to be pacifist, but he's still, like, leashes out in anger against the Emperor. He ends up fighting Vader. He almost kills him. And then he finally puts it all together and throws the lightsaber away. And so, like, when you see the flashbacks and he just does the quick lightsaber turn on and then immediately goes, wait, what? Like, that to me
I
is
love
just...
that.
That is just a concentrated version of what you see at the end of Return of the Jedi, where he saw such an intense vision, because we know visions can be intense. We saw Anakin Skywalker sweat a lot during his. We saw Rey scramble about during hers. We don't know what Luke saw, but it was probably, like, the one time that we know he had a vision in Empire, he made Yoda fall. He made a very expensive puppet fall into water. So whatever he saw, because this is also like 20 years after Jedi, so, the New Republic has been built, he's trying to create a new Jedi Order. If he sees that his own nephew is, like, on the way to become Darth Vader, even if it's not 100% set in stone, which it's even, like, who knows exactly what he saw, but for him to have a reflex where he turns on the lightsaber and then half a second later is like, why did I turn this on? But it's too late. Like that to me doesn't betray what Luke Skywalker was in the previous films. And the fact that he felt so guilty, and like he goes off and hides on this island, but unless we are meant to believe that he knew where this island was before, he must have gone on his own spiritual quest to find the original Jedi Temple, to find those original writings, and because those books weren't page turners, he didn't find what he was looking for and came to the conclusion that the Jedi were a mistake, and that even if he was trying to do it differently, it still failed. He shut himself off. But then at the end, right, when he comes back, when he projects himself onto Crate, I know he tells Leia, "I can't save him." But that's not Luke saying he cannot be saved. He is saying that he himself is unable to do it. Nobody else could have turned Vader aside from Luke Skywalker. You know,
So Dave, I think Leia's next line kind of proves you wrong, because
No.
Leia's next line is like, yeah, I know, like, my son isn't there anymore.
But then what's Luke's next line? He goes, "No one is ever truly lost." He is not saying, "Yeah, you're right, fuck Ben." He's like, "Nah, like, not everyone is truly lost." Kisses her on the forehead, winks at C-3PO. I love that wink. Best wink in Star Wars.
No, you know what? It's weird because, like, everyone shits on C-3PO. It's like, Luke and R2 have this big scene together. And Luke just winks at the 3PO and just walks off. It's like, fuck you, you gold.
No, but I love the way C-3PO says "Master Luke." I love the
Master
wink.
Luke? Yeah,
Master.
I like
but
it. It's
no,
nice.
but because Luke Skywalker didn't go there in person, that was the ultimate moment of pacifism. That's even more extreme than throwing his lightsaber away, because he wasn't put into a place where he would be forced to strike down Kylo or have Kylo strike him down. Because if Kylo...
So he doesn't win.
Right, so yeah, Kylo can't win, because even if he struck him down and built that anger, because Vader struck Obi-Wan down, that didn't make Vader turn. That would have
Who
just...
become more powerful than they could possibly imagine.
Like, that strengthened Vader, it would have strengthened Kylo. And Luke isn't put into the position where he has to strike down his nephew, because maybe there's a part of him that's like, it's possible that Rey did see something that wasn't just a manipulation. Like, maybe there could be something buried deep within him. Because even in the film we see, yes, at the end of The Force Awakens, he kills Han Solo, but then he refrains from trying to murder his mother. So I don't know if Leia would be the one that could possibly turn him, or if somehow down the line Rey could do it, or if it's anything. I'm not even saying that they should turn him in the next film. Like, I don't know whether or not I would want him to be redeemed at the last moment, but the fact that Luke just, appeared there as a projection, wasn't able to actually interact with him, like, he couldn't strike him down, he couldn't be struck down, that was a purely hopeful moment, which is entirely what Luke Skywalker is, especially at the end of Return of the Jedi. It's the same thing. So for anyone to go that this movie destroys the character of Luke Skywalker, it's just like, it's that visceral reaction of, oh, he can't do anything wrong, but why couldn't he do something wrong and then be able to redeem himself in that film in such a way that's just as grand as it was in the original trilogy? Like, that is Luke Skywalker to me, 100%.
Which also makes no sense, because so many people's favorite fan theory about Last Jedi was that Last Jedi and even Force Awakens was that Luke Skywalker turns evil.
Yeah.
And it's like, you guys want that, but you also are mad that, this character is just flawed. It's like, we can't win with you guys.
Right. Because I think either way, no matter what, like, if we had found out, for instance, that Luke Skywalker had delved so deep into the Force that he had basically disconnected from humanity, that would have made people just as angry, because he would have been like, oh yeah, I guess Han died, who cares? Like, the fact that he shut himself off from the Force, it was a lot easier for him to get back to where he was at the end of Return of the Jedi than if he had, like, become so disconnected. Or, yeah, if he had been, like, some weird evil Jedi. I know people... Because the film does deal with subverting expectation, but it also does deal in gray matter. Like, oh, here's Laura Dern. Is she and here's Poe, and he's like, oh, is she a traitor? Is she not? Like, there's...
that whole story, I think, is sloppy writing. There is go on a quick tangent. There is no reason for Laura Dern not to tell Poe what the fuck their plan is.
Well,
so much of the movie, like, the Resistance as a whole would be a lot more successful if she was just like, here's our plan, go sit the fuck down for 12 hours while we fuel these escape pods up, and then we'll leave. Like fucking so many things would have gone smoother. And again, there was no reason. There was no reason for her not to tell anyone. Completely no reason.
I feel like with that, it was I think there was a whole thing of Leia probably told them, like this was probably a plan that Leia and Holdo had come up of in case of something like that happening, and they knew that no matter what they said, Poe would have gone and acted against them, even if they had explained what their plan was. Well, no, because that's what Poe's character is.
I disagree. I don't think Poe is. I think them not saying anything again. If that is what their idea was, they're fucking idiots. Because it's the fact that Poe doesn't know anything and thinks that they're doing nothing is what makes him act out. If he knew there was a plan, I'm pretty sure he would just be like, he may not like it, but at least they have a fucking plan together, rather than the nothing he assumes they're doing.
Well, I think part of it is okay. So, so Leia's unconscious and everyone else is off the table. Poe doesn't even know who Holdo is, and I'm assuming that Holdo barely knows who Poe is. Poe was just demoted seconds ago. He is, since he's like lower on the ranks, and since they don't have an established relationship, she wouldn't be required to tell someone so further down like the details of a plan that they're probably concocting at that moment, like putting the pieces together, because she's looking at him as just this hothead. You got people in trouble. She is probably like, she's flawed in the sense that, oh yeah, she didn't tell him, but there isn't a reason why she necessarily would. If Poe had come
I think the moment where he forms a fucking mutiny would be the bit like, okay, like, explain your plan then. But they were just, I mean, obviously at that point, Finn and Rose are already off the ship. But I just think that there's no real reason, especially for a plan that kind of mundane of we're fueling up escape pods. There is no issue with a plan that mundane and boring of people knowing, especially when it's a thing where the Empire is behind, the First Order is behind us. If we have X amount of time before they'll kill us. I think just the fact that keeping your people sane, to be like, here's our plan, we're gonna fuel up and leave, would be what a fucking smart leader would do, rather than just having people be scared and angry.
But I guess
on your ship for 18 hours, which that is, I think, is just a big issue with lazy script writing in that regard.
I don't know. It could have been done slightly better. I think one thing that I've seen brought up, which probably would have helped, is if there was this notion that maybe there was a spy on board, even if it turned out there wasn't, which is why Vice Admiral Holdo would feel uncomfortable telling people that she's not familiar with. Like that extra line would have helped.
I thought for the longest time Finn was gonna be the tracker, because they say the Verse Resistance can track them through hyperspace. I assumed that all stormtroopers had like fucking chips in them or something, and they were tracking the ship through Finn. But in the end, there's like, no, we're just tracking you somehow. Or we're not gonna say how. We're just tracking you because
track you through a device.
What device? Like, it's but what's there has to be something on their ship that the fucking First Order is tracking. Again, it's these things where it's like it's lazy script writing. We're tracking you. How? It don't matter. We're tracking you.
It's Holdo's hair. It's so purple. You can see it across the galaxy. Like, oh man.
I will say though, her like last moment, one of the best moments in Star Wars history.
That's so that because I didn't even think about
when she she just goes to the hyperspace through the First Order's ships. It's a fucking beautiful moment, man. Like, it's all silent, and then shit just explodes. That's so badass. Which again, I've seen a lot of people say this online. I'm not sure how you'd have been able to do it, but on obviously going into this movie, they didn't know Carrie Fisher would pass away.
Yeah.
The fact that she's, Carrie Fisher's no longer with us, it just would have worked out better in the long run if that was Leia doing that.
But I think because they wanted that scene with Luke and her.
True, but I mean, like, you could have, like, I mean, obviously, if you knew going into this, you could have worked it out where, like, Luke does this, before he goes to the planet, he sees Leia again, like he projects onto the ship or something. Obviously, it would have been too difficult to kind of reconstruct that in post. But it's just the fact that now, obviously, aside, the only thing they can do is just say she died, or either say she died in between movies, or just reference her and never show her, which would be really fucking bad.
Yeah,
Just,
my theory is that what's going to happen is that she's going to die off. She's going to die off screen, and the end of the movie is going to see her like a CG version of her and Luke as Force ghosts.
No, because they it wouldn't be a CG Mark Hamill, but Disney have said, and I think there'll be too many people making them stick to their word on this. There will be no CGing of Carrie Fisher.
Well, I don't think you would need to do, if you were gonna just show Prince or Leia at the end as a Force ghost, you wouldn't have to CG that. I'm sure there's plenty of footage of her just
like stock
standing.
footage, maybe.
Yeah, like you could.
Maybe.
There's footage of her standing doing nothing that you could put there. I don't know if they would do that. I think it would be.
I don't think
no.
they will.
I would rather there be a moment where Luke is a Force ghost, because look, he's got to be a Force ghost in Episode 9. He needs to show up, where he makes a comment like
he says, "See you around, kid."
Right.
So he knows she's gonna come back.
Yeah, like if there was a comment that just said, "Hey, like that she like he can communicate with her, like that she, even if she's not full on Force ghost, that she's somewhere he can talk to her."
She's in all of us.
Yeah, just without getting into like there is definitely an afterlife, even though Force ghosts kind of imply there is definitely an afterlife. But
well, no, it's weird though, because there's a big thing, because apparently in the canon of Star Wars, Qui-Gon Jinn's the first character to ever do it.
right. Well, yeah, he learns the
It's
technique.
well, no, because Yoda, because I forget, I think it was a deleted scene in Revenge of the Sith, where it's like Yoda meditating, and then you hear like Liam Neeson speaking, and then
I think that was Attack of the Clones. That was a deleted scenes for.
No.
It's definitely Revenge of the Sith, because then there's a moment at the end of Revenge of the Sith where Yoda says, "I have found a way to speak to Qui-Gon. I will teach you this. I will teach you this." So it heavily implies that in the history of the Jedi, there's like Qui-Gon, Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and now Luke are the only 5 Jedi who have been able to Force ghost themselves.
Right, like they're able to
and
bring
there
missiles
was an
back.
episode of the Clone Wars which had Yoda seeing the ghost of Qui-Gon for the first time.
Well, isn't it just the voice though,
Qui-
not the ghost?
No, it was it was a ghost, and with Liam Neeson's voice too.
Well, no,
But
I thought it was a thing where Yoda hears him, but he doesn't see him.
No, that's in the movie.
Yeah.
In Revenge of the Sith, but I think
In the
Stefan said, I think
cartoon,
in
yeah,
that
it was a
cartoon
ghost.
You see a Force ghost. But again, also the fact that so obviously we didn't talk about there's two Disney movies released this year that have Space Mary Poppins. Which is quite interesting. So obviously, I have no problem with Leia being one with the Force. It makes sense because her father and brother are two of the most powerful Jedi who ever lived. She's clearly seen being able to sense and communicate with Luke in Empire and Jedi. Makes perfect sense. Her flying through space, I didn't mind it. I know a lot of people think it's stupid and like laughably bad. It kind of took me out for a moment, because then I was just like, why don't the Jedi just fly everywhere? If they can do this, but like Leia having Jedi powers makes perfect sense to me. I was completely fine with it. But
I mean, she used it and then immediately went into a coma. So
which again, there's so many things in again. It's like that whole section. It's completely pointless, because you could just have that scene where Leia gets knocked out, like her being sucked into space and flying back into the ship. Aside from having a nice moment in a story way, does fucking nothing other than putting her into a coma for an hour, which you could have done with something else. Like
putting into a coma is also what gets Poe to act on the whole getting rid of the tracker plan. Like, it was the fact that she's gone and she's in a coma. He's like, okay, we gotta do this now. Like that's what makes him be so reckless.
It does, but like again, it's the fact that like there was no story reason for her to Force fly.
Well,
like something else could have happened in that regard. Again, that is a very minor nitpick, but like in terms of a story structure, I wish we could have had Leia do something Force related, actually mean something more. than that in a way. I mean, it looked, it was great. I knew it was going to happen because I was like, "There's no fucking way." Carrie Fisher, because it had been confirmed. They hadn't planned for her to die. So, like, she's not going to be fucking dead, and it's way too early in this movie for them to kill Princess Leia.
Right.
So like I was just waiting for her. I was waiting for her eyes to open, and her to do. I did not see Force flying. I'll be honest. I did not I did not see that coming.
Well, she is in space.
Was she gonna do? Was she gonna chaos control?
Yeah, it's not like she was on crate and then starts flying around. It's not like she levitates and is zooming. She is in space. There's no gravity in space. She's
speaking of crate. My favorite tweet I've seen possibly all year is shout out to the dumbest fucking character in all of Star Wars who licks the floor and says salt.
He's not the dumbest. He's the most realistic character in Star Wars.
That's like the dumbest character. No, the fact that he would fucking know what he would know that's just. That is the audience are fucking stupid. We have to spell out this is salt. That's all that moment's there for.
I don't think it's more so saying like I don't think it's more of a explain to the audience this is salt. It's just so weird that there's a character in a Star Wars movie pointing out how weird like the Star Wars like world that they're on is. Like they're like, a planet filled with salt. That's odd.
So dumb. It's so fucking dumb.
It's out of play. It's so out of place, but I love it.
It makes for a great visual where they're flying those fucking Junker robots, like Junker ships down. Although, question: why is Rose flying that? It's been clearly established she was just like janitor / guard.
Because
so
almost
why is she now
everyone
in a
is
ship?
Everyone is dead.
Because everyone's dead. Yes.
Because there are 30 ships that get shot out. There are 6 that land.
But does every member of the Resistance have ship training?
Well, she is a mechanic, and as far as I know, most car mechanics know how to drive.
And her sister was like one of the people who was flying the bombers. So
right.
My brother's an accountant. I wouldn't trust me to do anyone's taxes. That doesn't mean shit, Stefan.
I think it's more like she's familiar with these ships. She's done mechanical work. I'm sure she's jumped in one or two and flown around.
Again,
because
that,
it's like this desperate
I mean,
moment in time.
Yeah. I get that. I mean, like, ultimately, that's not even a problem for me. To me, I was just like, obviously, it means more to have characters we know. Mm-hmm. I will say though, I was kind of hoping Finn would die, because he's done nothing relevant the entire movie. So like, have him do something meaningful, please. Because I hated the fucking showdown. So you know like how after Force Awakens, everyone was like, can we never see a Death Star type weapon again? Mm-hmm. After Last Jedi, can we never have the heroes go on to an Imperial ship again? Because like it's 2 movies in a row now we've had that. I don't want to fucking see it again. And I hated everything to do with when they're about to be executed. One, because Finn, again, this is another thing of just Star Wars in the original trilogy had used very, very minor curse words like hell and damn, essentially. I think in the prequels, damn is said once in Attack of the Clones by the 50s diner alien, which let's all forget that ever happened. But
Dexter is the best Star Wars character ever made.
But Last Jedi uses bastard and ass, which are 2 words. Again, like I'm sure anyone who's watched our content, we have no problem with swearing. But in context of the Star Wars universe, I'm like, I don't know if these words fit.
It's PG-13
in this universe.
Again, it's more modern speak, like especially because like if you watch like all the other like all the other extended universe like books, cartoons, comics, like the style of writing is a lot more in style of like modern speak and modern they adapted towards modern times. So of course the movies would go ahead and follow suit.
That's actually why I stopped watching Star Wars Rebels. I was like, these characters ain't Star Wars. This sounds like I'm watching like Spectacular Spider-Man, which makes sense because it's Greg Weisman, the better there. I was just like, I don't know, this isn't my Star Wars. Again, that is like a real fucking red letter media
nitpick,
worthless nitpick, and that's entirely on me. I own that. That's fine.
Well, you at least watched the episode with Darth Vader, right?
Yeah, I've seen that. I've watched the clip. I will say I haven't seen the full episode, but I've seen the clip of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Maul having a rematch several times. Yeah. It is. I will say, like there were moments I loved in Force Awakens and Last Jedi. In terms of a battle, I think nothing's come close to being as just awesome
Hmm.
as the 20-second confrontation between Darth Maul and Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars Rebels. I wish they do more things like that, but they don't because it wouldn't play to a I think I think you can't have a final confrontation be that short in a movie because you will upset people, and I get that. I just wish
Right.
that in one of these cases they would do something that badass.
It wasn't like there was like I mean Snoke didn't even get a battle. He just got stabbed in the side.
That's
So
another thing. Like, so like Snoke's supposed to be this like giant, this like Snoke is supposed to be this great villain. He can't even fucking tell that Kylo Ren's using the Force against him, like against the Emperor. The Emperor was like, "I can sense your anger." Like the Emperor could sense what Luke was trying to do,
Yeah, but
but
the
like
Emperor,
Snoke can't.
the Emperor didn't sense Darth Vader picking him up and throwing him down a shaft.
But that isn't using the Force though. That's just Vader internal. I mean, like kind of the same thing. But you would think someone like it's the bit where like Rey, and it's a very nice moment when Rey goes to pull the lightsaber towards her, but Snoke controls it and just smacks her in the head with it.
you know, yes,
Like it's like if Snoke can sense that again, you would think he'd be able to tell that the lightsaber, which is like an inch away from him, is being turned towards him. Small things like that. Where I was just like,
Well,
what? Like if
I think that was because like Snoke is putting like all of his effort into holding on to Rey and pointing Rey towards Kylo, and
that's doing no effort, man.
No,
He ain't
and-
fucking.
no,
like,
and-
he
no.
says he like Snoke is like this. Is not like he puts no effort into controlling Rey because that's how weak she
that's
is.
not what. No, I mean like because he's focusing on her because and he's seeing Kylo Ren because he's like yes I want to see you like stab her and do whatever and he's seeing him do it like on his own lightsaber but he's also secretly doing it on the one that's right beside him so I can kind of see Snoke being so blinded by his like his own like oh I want to see you do this I want to see you like do this for me that he won't even be paying attention to oh shit he's also doing this as well.
Right.
Which, if that's the case, I call that again bad screenwriting because that's something Snoke criticizes Kylo Ren for earlier in the movie.
Well, the Sith deal in absolutes, and he sees
Which is an
Kylo-
absolute.
You're right. He sees Kylo. He's like, "You are absolutely turning a lightsaber. I can see it with my own two eyes." And I am experiencing the biggest Force boner right now, watching you getting ready to murder this 19-year-old, 20-year-old girl. So he's not, and then he's like, "Ah, man, I feel. Oh, that wasn't that. Oh, my Force boner just got cut in half."
Man, you took this to a weird sexual place, David. I wasn't expecting.
Well, I mean, half of Rey and Kylo's interactions are like
Are very
weird-
sexually drived.
They are sexually. Well, because
That pointless scene where he's shirtless for what the fuck?
But that scene was obvious. Like they knew what they were doing because even she's like, "You put on a shirt, please." Like they both knew what they was doing. Like everyone involved, including the filmmakers, knew what that scene was, and
Right,
they're just like,
because she's a bit innocent, she's a bit naive. Like one of the things, like I enjoy just the sheer joy that is on Daisy Ridley's face during certain things. Like I don't know how you feel about this particular joke, but when Luke is giving her the first lesson and tells her to reach out. To
I love that. Yeah, I love
like
that moment.
That's great. And like then he tickles her with that little piece of grass. Like how excited she gets. She's like,
when she just smacks his hand, that was
yeah,
great.
and then it's like I love that, and
also asshole Luke is so good.
yeah, and like there's a scene when she's standing like it's raining and she's under the Millennium Falcon and she's sticking her hand out and she's feeling rain, which for like the first time in her life. Like there's this,
like that moment.
There's this joy and innocence there, and so then when you have Kylo Ren who's just like, oh hey, this isn't a good time. I'm showing off this
missing-
6-pack.
He's the only thing he's missing is a damaged thing on his forehead.
Yeah. So
She was his queen, and God
It's like-
forgive anyone who disrespects his queen.
because I think like if Snoke is the one controlling when they are meeting, like he knows that that Rey.
He's shirtless at the time.
Well, no, I mean, he knows that Kylo's shirtless, and I think he gets the feeling of who Rey is. Like that puts her off kilter right away. That places her in an uncomfortable moment. She's not expecting someone to be topless and right in her face, So that didn't bother me. That seemed like a very human moment, maybe a modern moment, but a very human moment there, and that's it didn't throw me out of the film.
And I really like the editing in all those scenes, like how it cut back and forth between their face, and how you could sense, without actually seeing them both in the same room, you could feel as if they were looking at each other.
Yeah, I think the first time I'm glad it was revealed Snoke was behind it, because I think if that wasn't involved, I would have been like, this is kind of weird. But yeah, I think for the narrative purposes, it worked well. I love the bit where she sees him and tries to shoot him, ends up blowing a hole in the heart.
That is her,
and he reacts.
That's her first
it's
reaction.
It's a cute moment.
I like her first instinct when she sees Kylo is to just shoot him, not talk to him, not interact with him. She's like, I'm just going to shoot you in the face. I hope you don't mind.
I will say, I think I would have liked a bit more, because I think her jump from I fucking hate you to I can save you, and we're kind of kindred spirits is a bit too quick. I would have liked maybe one more scene where they connect a bit more before she's just like, I can save him.
Right.
I can save him.
It is sort of condensing the narrative of Empire and Jedi with Luke and Vader into the first half of the Last Jedi.
Which again, there was nothing original in this movie.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
yeah, it's fine.
It's very condensed poetry. Half of it rhymes.
It's condensed milk poetry. That's what's coming out of that creature sitting on Ahch-To.
So what's coming out of the porgs?
You don't want to know. Death sticks. No, that's how death sticks are made, Stefan.
Space puffins.
Ground up porgs.
I want to go home and rethink my life.
But yeah.
The FTCR motto.
Oh man, here's a fan theory. Okay, so because at the end of the film, well, in the very beginning, we have Kylo state, "Oh, Rey, you're not the one doing this because it would kill you." And as we see, Luke Skywalker exerts all this energy, and it does lead to him dying, even though he does it in a very peaceful, joining the Force sort of way.
I liked it. I knew but who knew going into this he was going to die? Yeah. I knew certainly he was going to die.
But okay,
it was just a question of how.
Yeah.
So if Snoke is supposed to be super powerful, he's been having them communicate nonstop, and then she shows up and he's flinging her around. That's got to be a bit draining to someone. Even if he's supposed to be the super powerful Dark Force user, maybe that's why Kylo was able to get the upper hand, because he's just been swinging his Force all over the place, and you got to have that refractory period.
I think that's more a case of Snoke is boosting them, but they're still using they're still using the Force themselves.
Right, but
so it is. I mean, I get what you're saying. Mm-hmm. I doubt that crossed Rian Johnson's mind in at that moment. I think he was just he just doesn't realize it's there.
And also because by the end of the film, they even after Snoke's dead, they still have that connection when she closes the door on him, literally.
Yeah, but that's the sort of connection that Luke and Leia have, because they're both around Cloud City. When she flies away, they're not still talking. Even Luke and Vader at the end of Empire are able to talk for a little bit. And that's why Luke gets so weird in Jedi, because Vader is on the Death Star too, or on his Super Star Destroyer. They are in close proximity.
I'm jeopardizing the mission. I shouldn't have come here.
It's not like Luke is halfway across the galaxy and going, I'm jeopardizing it.
Fuck you, Dad!
So Rey and Kylo can still have a bit of a connection, but once she flies away on the Millennium Falcon, he won't be able to follow her. He won't be able to figure out where she is. That's missing from him until they are once again in close proximity, which could present something interesting in Episode 9, where maybe she can't be on the front lines of whatever they're doing, because if he's constantly sensing her, that's constantly putting people in trouble. So she has to stay off and do whatever else she's doing.
Or it could even be her using that to her advantage, to drive him away.
True.
I will say, of all of the kind of, again, to quote Kevin Smith, "fuck you, J.J. Abrams" moments, I loved the fact that Rey's parents are no one.
Yep.
Like I love the fact that she's not related to somebody in this franchise.
Yeah, I think at this point, like, it makes the most sense. Like when I was saying before,
It makes the most sense, but it also it makes her retroactively stupid in Force Awakens, because she says she's always known. So it's almost like she's just trying to get attention in Force Awakens.
like she's always known that
Kind
there's
of.
something special about her, but that doesn't mean that she's. Or do you mean she's always known about her parents? Is that what you meant?
Well, yeah, because she says, it's a moment in when Kylo reveals what her parents are. Rey's like deep down, I've always known, and so it's almost I get the fix in Jedi, but just going back to watch Force Awakens, so much of Rey is her talking about waiting for her parents, that it almost is just like you're just lying to yourself and you're an idiot.
I mean,
stop doing that.
But
That's
do you
kind of
blame
like-
her?
Yeah, I feel like
I do. Fuck her. Fuck her, Stefan.
I feel like there's been narratives before of like, where they're like, here's a kid who's an orphan, or their parents put them up for adoption, and they like to construct a narrative that one day their real parents are going to come back and save them. Like, I'm sure that's something that's
Yeah.
been in fiction and even
Well,
real life.
It has.
I think the main thing it's obviously it's meant to be a slight parallel of Luke and Anakin, because that's what the big thing Lucas said about Episode 1 was the difference is that Luke. The only thing that made Luke go on his journey was his family being murdered. Anakin decides to go on his own, and you can make the case the same. Rey's kind of just more on the run at that point. It's not like a conscious like I need to, I will leave this place to go on a journey. She's like, if I don't get out of it, I'm gonna fucking die, type of thing. So it to me it very again another reason why.
Hey, she could have gotten
Also-
500 portions if she just gave up BB-8,
Yeah, fuck that droid. I mean, again, it's another reason why everyone says Force Awakens was just a New Hope clone, and I know some people have been like Force Awakens was too similar, Last Jedi is too different, you can't compare. I'm like, no, fucking Last Jedi is just instead of just completely copying one movie, it just takes different pieces from all the movies and combines it together. There is nothing original in this movie. Get fucked, Stefan.
Even The Force Awakens took stuff
I'm joking.
from
I'm
all three.
joking.
Also, Rey being no one works into the film's like whole general point, which is that it doesn't matter where you came from. Like the Force belongs to anyone. Like you don't
Yeah.
have to Rey didn't have to be a Skywalker. Rey didn't have to be a Kenobi in order to be
yeah.
important. Rey can be important because of what she stands for and what she does. And then the whole thing with the kid at the end showing that there's that little spark that can be like anybody can do something. Anybody can start something great. Which also
I will
goes
say though. Oh, sorry, after
which
you
also
finish.
goes into Kylo Ren's whole point, which is his whole thing essentially: screw the Jedi, screw the Sith, screw the First Order, screw the Resistance, just burn it all down and start anew.
I love that moment, but it's ruined in the next scene where he just takes control of the First Order.
I think at that point his whole thing is that he's like, well, I don't have Rey, so I kind of need to use them. Like that's what I see it as, because I mean he's still that whiny kid who's like, no, I'm the supreme leader, Hux. You're not, it's me.
Yeah, because-
I love
That's
those two
that's a
bickering.
great moment.
I
yeah.
love those two bickering, and there's that scene where he's like on the floor and Hux is about to pull out his gun, but then he gets up, he just slowly puts it away.
I was listening earlier to Fat Man on Batman. They had Kevin Smith and Mark Bernardin talking about it, and Mark Bernardin brought up a point which I hadn't thought about, but now I wish was true. He was like, he said he wishes Hux was more competent and less of an idiot. Which I kind of wish Hux was more in control and it wasn't just. Almost in some regards, he's almost as big of a whiny crybaby as Kylo Ren is.
Which
I
I
think
think
it would've-
is the point. Like I think the
I mean-
point that
I
the
mean, yeah,
First Order is just these whiny like dipshits that are just
True,
trying.
but then it makes it harder to see them as a threat when everyone in there, with the exception of Snoke, but he's dead now, so fuck him. But all of their high command are idiots. Like the thing what I love about
Here's the thing. You wonder how they get control of power, but have you looked at what America is right now?
I wasn't gonna go there, Stefan. I wasn't gonna go there, but points.
Like, I'm
Points.
like, now, when you see how America is right now, anytime you'd be like, oh, how can people be so stupid? Like, how can they fall for such idiots taking control of everything? Oh, wait. So,
Well, I think the difference is at this point the First Order aren't technically in control of anything. They're trying to. I think again. I haven't read any of the expanded universe, but in context of Episode 7 and Episode 8, they are trying to snuff out the Resistance, so there will be no one to oppose them when they actually try and take over.
Yeah.
They have technically not taken over anything yet, so they're not actually in power of anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
They're just murdering people at this point.
yeah, in the Aftermath books, in the last one, you're given this little bit where the remnants of the Empire that shuffle away after the Battle of Jakku, they go off into the unknown regions, and you assume that they must do some regrouping there. And
Neo-Nazis.
we don't know the progression from this remnant to what the First Order becomes. You know, we don't know the details of that story yet. But like, they're off in a corner, and they're, yeah, like, so right now they come in through brute force, and the Resistance are the only people who look at them and like, this could be a threat, probably influenced slightly by the fact that Ben Solo rushed off to join them, and Leia's like, oh shit. But I mean, even in Bloodline, she's like, we need to keep an eye on, there's something going on here, there is some sort of conspiracy that we need to be looking at. And so yeah, in The Force Awakens, that's their first big move, so I'm assuming that's why during The Last Jedi, we don't see it, but they must be using brute force to try and take over as much as they can as quickly as possible.
Yeah, Last Jedi's whole thing is that you essentially have all of the First Order chasing down all of the Resistance, because they're
it's
like,
not all
okay,
of the first. Not all of the Force.
majority. I mean, considering that Snoke's like ship is there, and like you have a good like fair amount of them, I assume it's majority of the First Order.
I don't know. I wasn't under the impression
because it opens with, I forget what they was it Dreadnought they talk about, like, but there's dialogue that implies the First Order have several more of these ships, which is ships we haven't seen before, and the fact that they just take out one is a big deal. But I'm just like if they had all this power to begin with, like, why, like, just
that's why
the Starkiller base in general is very problematic for this. Like, how the fuck did no one know that was being built?
it's off in the corner of the
magic.
universe. They weren't paying attention.
I love that moment. I think the biggest fan fiction-y moment in the franchise's history is in Force Awakens, but they're like, here's the Death Star. Here's the Starkiller base. It's like 1,000 times bigger, and it's 1,000 times bigger and can blow up 5 planets at once. It is the most fan fiction-y fucking thing I've ever seen in a movie.
And it gets blown up in the exact same way.
If it was
It's
like,
so fucking dumb.
it's like, this is
dumb.
Sonic the Hedgehog, and then he zooms out, and then this is my original fan character. As you can see, he is 1,000
Jesus,
times faster
the
than Sonic.
Speedy the porcupine. He's
Yeah.
way
And then Han
this
Solo,
guy's-
It's Sinos.
This guy's even faster than Sonic.
and then Han Solo walks, and he's like, "Yeah, but where's the Rule 34?" Like, oh man, what's going on?
But where's his power source? We need to find his power.
No!
So you're saying
It's
infinite is the Starkiller base.
That's
It's
what
exactly 8,999.
Heck. Yeah, but I think maybe something that also throws people off with The Last Jedi is that it's very much like a character piece, right? Where I know Snoke dies, and we see Luke die, and there are these moments, but we're not getting like the grander scale of what's happening. We got a sense of the grander scale in like A New Hope and Return of the Jedi, because we got the Death Stars floating around, and I think Empire is probably the closest in the sense that, okay, this is a smaller, intimate moment. What happens with Luke and Leia and Han don't have like a direct consequence with what the Empire is doing on a grand scale. And I think The Last Jedi kind of echoes that as well, where we're just seeing this one sliver of everything that's happening.
It's a very small story in context of what happens in previous movies. This is probably the
Right. Especially like with the prequels, because that's just grand strokes. Like, a lot of people complain that the characters seem wooden, but it's it's
Well,
George
the pre-
Lucas
the
trying
pre-
to cram in everything into these 3 films instead of focusing on
pre-
specific characters and
the
letting it.
prequels are all story, no character.
Right, and I think
and
It's
that's
just all
what and
plot.
yeah, and these ones are all character and themes and not caring as much about the story.
Yeah, because like if you were to break it down, what is the story of Force Awakens? So not Force Awakens, of Last Jedi. It's the First Resistance very slowly chases the Resistance.
it's near
and
light
Rey-
speed. That's not slow.
Right, dude, those they're filmed so fucking slowly, and it's like, and Rey goes to meet Luke Skywalker, who doesn't train her, and then he appears at the end and saves the day. Like there's like the story is very paper thin, and like no one really accomplishes anything that
But
they
what
set out to do.
but what makes it work is the characters and how they're portrayed and the actual themes and ideas that the film is expressing and the whole moving away from
Mostly. I would say I loved everything about Luke Skywalker. I think Rey and Kylo Ren, their arcs, their story is great. I think it was. I still question their choice to do it, but at least Poe Dameron has some kind of arc.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of. I mean, it's stupid, but it's kind of an arc. I thought. I didn't much care for the stuff with Finn and Rose.
I'd say
I don't-
Finn and Rose worked because like the characters, like their what do you call it, their back and forth, their interactions with each other, I think is what helped make it work, and how essentially like by making Rose a more like Rose being a major character kind of like shows like the other side that we haven't seen yet, like one of the lower people, and seeing like the Star Wars universe from their point of view.
So Luke Skywalker.
At start, yeah, Luke Skywalker, but then he
Or
became
Anakin Skywalker.
but then they became super mega important. But here's
Which she probably will in the next one.
I guess it could be like it's like the episode in Star Trek: The Next Generation, Lower Decks, right, where you see people who are on the Enterprise that aren't the captain or the first officer. Like that's what Rose embodies in this film, and I mean. I enjoy her character and I enjoy her interactions with Finn, and I do think Finn does go on a bit of a journey because, like,
it's about defining like why he's that. Like it's really defining why he sticks around, other than Poe and Rey.
Right? Yeah,
Well,
because in the Force Awakens,
I
his
don't get
connections.
why.
Oh,
Because nothing he does means anything. Finn fails at everything he attempts in this movie.
Most people fail at what they're attempting in this movie.
and
Everyone, like, no one succeeds. The only one who succeeds is Laura Dern. She fucking kills herself. Like, no one else succeeds at anything.
And that's what makes this movie so good, is that yes, we can have a whole movie where everybody fails,
Well-
but that's okay because that's the point, is
in
everyone failing.
In Empire Strikes Back, how many people succeed? I guess Vader and Boba Fett succeed, but nobody else really has a grand victory in that film.
And Last Jedi is has more of a hopeful ending than
Although,
Empire.
I think that might be I think I like it more if it again. But then if it ended on a down note, people would complain it was trying to copy too much from Empire. So I get why they changed that. But yeah, like the ending of Empire, people act realistically to the shit that's happened.
Yeah.
So much goes fucking wrong in Last Jedi, but it ends. I was like, we're gonna have a bit of resistance. We're gonna fucking save the day.
Yeah, like I like Rey and Leia's exchange, but the fact that it then cuts to a Return of the Jedi, like, hey, what's up scene or that last shot of everyone seems awkward. Like that
Yeah.
moment should be more somber. I guess especially since you have the coda with the kid, which I will say feels really weird to end a Star Wars film on
And
a
again-
character that's not a main character, because that's the first time
again,
you end a film that's not on a main character. It almost feels like it should be a post-credit scene, but because Star Wars
And-
doesn't have post-credit scenes, they threw it at the end of the film.
And David, that goes back to my earlier comment about this movie doing things against the filmic language of the established series.
Yeah.
I mean, I get like it's a nice notion, but it feels like that would be better suited to the proposed trilogy that Johnson's gonna do. That's not related to the established canon, at all.
And I mean,
It-
and Rogue One did play with it too, Like, they did things that the Star Wars, the numbered films haven't done either. But
I feel like as long as it works and as long as it's well done, I don't think it's a real problem if they do stuff that's not, especially when this whole point of the film is that we're moving away from the old.
True, but Stefan, I think obviously in terms of box office, it's done very well, but critically and fan reaction, this might be this is the Sonic Unleashed of the Star Wars universe.
right. Well, because critically, it's the critics love it. It's the fans.
But that's because Disney paid off everyone. David.
That is not.
Open
no,
your
no,
eyes.
no, 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 no.
Sure. Yeah, Disney paid off everyone.
I would, you know what? Like Disney,
They even paid off the company that blacklisted them for like a few weeks.
That's like that Disney do some fucked up shit. Again, I am joking in there. I don't think Disney paid off everyone. I would not be surprised though if money did exchange hands in certain places. For good reviews, but I mean, companies have done that for years. So that's not down to Disney,
I don't think it's as extensive as some people assume.
Oh no, yes,
Yeah.
I know the fact that some, it's like people react to Marvel movies. So everyone hates DC, and people just give Marvel movies because they're paid off. When it's not the fact that just Marvel just make better movies, but what have you.
And think about this, whereas that. So many people have kind of worried and complained about like Star Wars and even like Marvel stuff, and a lot of the stuff Disney does is that they're too safe. They don't take any chances. We're just going to get the same old thing every single time. So the fact that Last Jedi is able to come out and do something this divisive, and like having so many people have so many differing opinions, both like good and bad, but having like reasons for that, it allows for like good and long discussion instead of like say something like Rogue One where people were just like, it's like forgettable, like that happened, I guess.
Unless you're Red Letter Media, where you just make 7,000 videos about how anyone who likes Rogue One is an idiot.
Because they got to make fun of Star Wars fans for daring to like Star Wars movies despite
even though of course the fact that the only reason they're famous is because of Star Wars fans.
They made 2-hour-long videos about the holiday special. They have no reason.
Well, to be fair, one of them was a joke.
One of them was a joke, and it was a good joke.
Yeah, it was a funny joke. But I think I kind of fall in line with their reaction to Last Jedi. There were, again, things I loved. I think ultimately I would be positive. Overall, I am positive about this. I think the again, it's pure fanboy moment. I think it's only because I've lived with this franchise. I think if this was the first Star Wars movie you've ever seen, I can see people actively disliking it because I think a lot of the emotional highs only come from the fact that again, if this is your first Star Wars movie, like seeing Yoda, Luke, and Leia seeing each other will mean fucking nothing to you. Which again, the high points to me is like I actively cried twice in this movie, but that would not have happened if it was not for my love of this franchise and these characters and knowing their relationships. So like when Luke and Leia meet for the first time in what it's going to be probably decades, even though Luke's not technically there, which means he shouldn't be able to kiss on the forehead, but whatever. And Leia should know when he puts her hands on her head that she's a fucking Force ghost. She's not real, but
maybe she does know, and she just like who know. Like
Stefan, your fucking response to every bit of criticism. Well, maybe they do know. You were the worst person to have you're the worst person to have this kind of conversation with.
That's because it doesn't matter. That's because it doesn't matter.
Ultimately, it doesn't matter. But there are so many small moments that quote unquote don't matter. It's like Sonic Mania. There are so many small little things that aren't that big of a deal, but when you add them up, it's like I don't know. It's you're kind of veering into kind of again bad screenwriting at this point, but again, they neither here nor there. But I think that if you're a fan of this franchise, for good or bad, I think there are moments in this that will strike you in the feels, as the kids used to say.
In the feels.
This does. These are things I know like well.
Yes. Unlike Rogue One, and to a certain degree, Force Awakens. Again, I think everything feels more organic. Isn't just here's the fucking chess sequence from New Hope, or here's the fucking people who are mean to Luke for no good reason. There's an explanation, and for most of the time plot relevance for why we're seeing these things and these characters.
Like the Obi-Wan Kenobi, "You're my only hope" thing, which Luke even says, like, he
That's a
even
cheap. I
it's a
love
cheap
that
shot.
moment. That's a cheap shot. That's a really fucking good moment.
Oh man, did is that one of the times you cried?
No, okay. Technically, one of them wasn't part of the film. It was when Yoda appeared, when Luke and Leia like met again.
Uh-huh.
I got teary-eyed, but I flat out shed many a tear when during the credits it said for our princess, Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
That I was like, damn.
Oh,
I'm a fan of Carrie Fisher. I loved her in the Star Wars movies. I've liked her in previous other movies, but I would never have said I was a big I never followed her career or like cared that much. But I think just in context of this movie, in context of what Leia does in the movie, seeing that did hit me. Did hit me hard.
Yep.
Oh!
So yes, I think I'm in David's camp. I think the crew for the crew for Force Awakens, which is like Luke Skywalker has vanished.
Mm-hmm.
I think the crew for episode 9 would be like if Princess Leia has died,
Oh.
then they'll just gloss over it from there.
Well, it'll start.
That would be
It's gonna start with her funeral. That's what it's
that
gonna
would
be.
yeah
No,
probably
it'll start
probably,
with
I
the
could see
funeral.
that.
Lando Calrissian walks in. He says, "Hello, what have?" Oh,
He better be in episode 9. Better get
What
Billy
have
D.
we? He's walking and goes, "What have we here?"
oh, that was.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
Apparently, well, Stefan, one thing I'll say to close out with, again, something I'd heard on the Fat Man and Batman episode, which was just regurgitated, but something that was said online. Apparently, the owner of the casino was meant to be Lando Calrissian, but apparently the scuttlebutt is Disney didn't feel that Billy D. Williams still had it as Lando, I guess.
Oh, that's weird.
There was some notion that like, he wasn't like it didn't feel like Lando, so like no, let's not do again. That can be complete fucking bollocks, but that's a rumor that's going around like Lando.
Well, 'cause-
I think that would have taken me out of it. I think if they would have if he would have been on the planet, that would have felt too much like we're shoehorning in characters. So I
mean-
am glad that Lando wasn't the stupid casino owner.
And that planet already had like 2 other cameos in it already.
Yeah,
Like,
so we
was
didn't
it
fucking need it.
the what is it, the code breaker that they were going to get? That was who was Justin Theroux.
Mm-hmm.
And then the alien that was putting the coins in BB-8 was Mark Hamill.
The voice was Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
And I believe Warwick Davis has a cameo somewhere in that Casino
Right.
Planet as well. He's not the coin guy, which he should have been because fucking it's Warwick Davis for Christ's sakes. And I think the payoff to that, there's no fucking way BB-8 held all those coins in his tiny ball. No fucking way.
Now
I also think Joseph Gordon-Levitt is also in there somewhere.
Apparently the English princes Harry and William are stormtroopers in this movie.
And Tom Hardy was a stormtrooper.
And Tom Hardy, yeah. Which there's like I think one of my favorite cameo is in Force Awakens was Daniel Craig as
Yeah.
the stormtrooper that Rey mind possesses.
That's a good one.
It's a good one.
Also, I
guess-
liked. I thought it was interesting with Benicio del Toro's DJ. I thought it was an interesting like direction to take him in, like having a smuggler that doesn't actually turn good. That just says, "Yeah, fuck everything, I'm out."
I'm surprised the Empire just didn't murder him. Also, the Resistance just didn't. The First Order just didn't murder him. Like, because that just felt like something the Resistance would, the First Order would do.
It was probably. I assume, based on what the film says, it was like they gave him money and then he would tell like the Resistance secrets.
Well, yeah, but again, at that point, like, why didn't they just kill him after
Well,
that?
they didn't kill. Well, they left. What's their face? They left Finn and Rose there. Like, Like they didn't just kill them immediately. So
That at least there's a reason with Phasma, who is just like, what a waste of what could have been a good character.
I really want Phasma to come back in episode 9 and them not to explain anything. Just make her be the Jason Voorhees of Star
just
Wars.
like everything else.
Yeah.
But I hated that moment when after Laura Dern light speeds through the ship, all those fucking stormtroopers are dead. Finn and Rose are alive. Like the Star Wars has always had good action, but it's never felt. Some scenes in the prequels have, but it doesn't feel like typical brainless Hollywood action. That sequence when Finn defeats Phasma was the closest to just being like a dumb Michael Bay action scene, and I hated everything in it because it felt so on Star Wars. It felt like just generic, mindless, dumb action sequence.
And to be fair, not all of the stormtroopers died, so at least it makes sense why they didn't. It wasn't like everybody died. So
no, everyone next, like Phasma and her team, like who were like up the the area, lived, but like everyone who was next to Finn and Rose died except for them, and of course there was just one ship left. Like everything about it was just like so generic action scene that I was just like, this. It was lazy, and it had the look of prequel green screen, where I didn't believe for a second they were on a real set, like at all. It looked so bad.
I wouldn't say prequel green screen, but I would say like J.J. Abrams Star Trek. I think.
No, you know what? I take it back. No prequel. It looked like Batman v Superman when they fight Doomsday. That level of green, of like you can just tell everything's fake.
Color correction, like the color correction. Yeah, I'll agree with you. It kind of reminds me of that.
It didn't look good. That whole sequence, I was just like, this is too dumb for a Star Wars. Like Star Wars doesn't do this kind of dumb action.
Well, at least especially
right after the
facial hair off. That's
especially after the Kylo Ren and Rey lightsaber battle, which that was really cool.
Yeah, I've heard people trash that. I like the fact that it was in Masters. It was in wide shots. I like the fact that they didn't do a lot of pointless cutting.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah. And also, if you pay attention, most of those Praetorian guards, where have I heard that before? Look, Praetorians.
So what you're saying is that Ken Penders now also owns Star Wars.
Oh man,
Wait,
should
what?
I mention the fact? Look, you can cut this out later if you want. Ken Penders tweeted about how he watched The Last Jedi, and in that tweet he was like, "Oh yeah, I really like the film because it reminds me of a thing that I am putting in the Larasu Chronicles," and I was just like, "God damn it, Ken! Can't you just say a film is good without trying to relate it to a thing that you're never going to release? Why in the world did you do that?"
Because he is the greatest writer of all time. How have you not figured this out?
Like I just okay. But anyway, what was? Oh right. So the Praetorian guards, most of them are going after Kylo, and usually Rey is like it's one or maybe two. But I feel like most of them are going after him because they consider him the bigger threat.
Well, no, it makes sense because they're like Snoke's bodyguards, and
Yeah.
he murdered Snoke, so it makes sense why they would go after him. But
Right.
also, yeah, he is clearly more of a, well, at least to them, he's more of a threat than Rey would be. So yeah, it makes sense.
Right. Well, because I liked it also because I know, like, one of the criticisms of Force Awakens, people were like, "Oh, how could Rey be so powerful?" Even though they're kind of ignoring the fact that she's
He
fighting.
gets shot in the fucking
Yeah,
stomach.
I know he does get shot. in the
Kylo
stomach.
Ren gets shot in the foot. He's bleeding. He's like, again, to quote Red Letter Media, he's bleeding to fucking death. You know, when they're on that snow planet.
Yeah, like it makes sense even though people like to ignore it. And the fact that, you know, she's struggling through certain things and like it just she feels real here and not just I'm the best at everything, because she's not. Like, she has raw power, but it's not refined, and that's, you know, so then at the end when they're fighting over that lightsaber, it's just here's someone who's angry and here's someone who's raw, and they're trying to pull it together, and they're both pretty much polar opposites, both kind of out, you know, like I like it. I like that.
The only successful thing that she uses the Force to do is pull rocks.
Move rocks, yeah.
Yeah.
Move rocks and break a rock.
But
That's
she,
it.
yeah, but at least she does have those books, though. She has the books at the end of the film, so she could.
She has the lightsaber.
No, she has the books. The books are in the Millennium Falcon. Yoda did not destroy those books.
What the?
Wait, the books were on the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, okay, yeah. In
I
the
don't
final
remember
scene,
that.
when Finn is opening the drawer looking for a blanket to put on Rose, you see the spines of the ancient Jedi
that's
texts.
what that was.
That's what those are. Because what happens is Rey takes them before she leaves Ahch-To. So then when Luke is about to light that Force tree on fire, I'm assuming it's a Force tree, and Yoda is cackling to himself and burns it down, he does say to her, there is nothing in those books that Rey does not already possess, because she has them. So there is sort of this tail end thing where, yeah, there's a lot of things about how Kylo Ren is going on about how you have to burn down the past, and, you know, it's something that Luke's also saying. But at the end, like, Yoda does that because he knows that those texts aren't going to be destroyed when he lights it on fire. It's more like you need to, like,
preserve the past.
You
in
need
order
to
to
preserve
learn.
it, and yeah, like you can learn it, and it's the fact that it's like it's the ancient Jedi text. It's where everything started. It's not covered in all of the dogma that the Jedi were dealing with in the prequels. You know, I'm sure there's nothing in that book that says, "Hey, you better not get it on, because you might have some issues." I'm sure it's more just
And
raw information.
Chapter 16, don't go crazy and murder all the younglings.
Chapter
That is
27.
so good.
This is how you determine what
And the woman
midichlorians are.
and the children.
Chapter 12, Obi-Wan gets mad. And then I do.
Right. So yeah,
We've been rambling.
Yeah.
I'll say we've been rambling for over 2 hours, so we might want to wrap this up.
oh man.
So again, I think I've said my piece, boys. How about you?
I think so. I'm not sure if there's anything I've forgotten. I really enjoy. I saw it 2.5 times opening night because I had tickets.
Why half?
Well, I had a ticket for a 7 o'clock showing, but then I found out there was a 6 o'clock showing, the fan event. So I bought that, watched it, had all the emotions, then dashed out, still processing the ending, and going to the original showing I was supposed to go, watched the second half of the film there, and then saw it again at 10 or 10:30. Yeah, so I saw it 2.5 times because of that, running around and seeing it all, and I still need to go back and see it again, just because, you know, I've simmered on it, thought about it, but I think I know it's been very divisive between Star Wars fans, but I feel like it's a strong film, and it's an important film to the Star Wars universe as a whole, because I don't think there's anything that inherently contradicts what the Force is, or who Luke Skywalker is or could be. And it builds on those themes, but focuses on characters. I know a lot of them are new, some of them are old, and like, I mean, it's hard to say. Like, I don't think there will ever be a Star Wars film that lives up to the original or to Empire, because those were very special moments in time, you know, when those films were made. I mean, even Jedi, you could argue, like, you know, that trilogy, there's a reason why 3 films created an entire franchise, and people compare Star Wars to Star Trek. Star Trek had a 70-some episode show and a bunch of movies, and Star Wars had 3 films, but they were both on equal footing because of how strong those films are. So it's hard to say that The Last Jedi is better than those original 3, but I think I knew coming out of that film, I think I enjoyed it more than The Force Awakens. It certainly hit me in a lot of different ways that The Force Awakens didn't. I'm not saying The Force Awakens is bad, I took more out of what The Last Jedi was presenting. And yeah, I think that's why I get so baffled when people are just like, it's the worst, or it's bad, or let's pretend it didn't happen. Like, even if there are issues with it, because it's not a perfect movie, there's still so much good contained within there that relates to everything else that's Star Wars, and feels Star Wars, and is Star Wars. It's just, like, it deserves to be put up there with the rest of the saga. So
It makes me mad whenever people say that they want this to be erased from the canon, because it means that means all you want is just the same old, like, not just same old schlock, but like you don't want anything different to come. Like, if anything tries to challenge what you think of the other films, or tries to do something different in comparison to the other films, then you're completely wrong, and that's why we're getting Ron Howard's generic, probably, Han Solo film.
Yeah, I do not give a flying fuck about seeing that movie.
Yeah, like I'll probably still I'll probably still see it because it's Star Wars and I want to see what ends up happening with it. But the fact that again that you take two of the best directors working today and like two of the two best comedic directors working today and get rid of them 3/4 of the way through filming, you kind of don't have any confidence. And then when you have a director make his own vision out of the Star Wars universe and have all these fans saying that it's so terrible, we don't want different, we want to get rid of this, then you're kind of you essentially don't want you want the shock, you want the same old, you want just the references, you want the non-stop just copying of all the previous films without doing anything new to change it up.
Which again, that's the that's kind of the criticism that Red Letter Media have of Star Wars fans, and it's in some regards it's accurate to what they want.
That no one knows what they want. Like you don't want good films, you want just references to old films, and you don't want just old references to old films, you want new takes on those references, and you can't constantly keep making new films just out of that. Like there's the comics and the books and the cartoons, that's what that's made for. But with the movies, especially with all these new characters, you can push it forward, you can take it in a new direction, you can make something as diverse as divisive as this, and it like stands for, it's something important, it's something that can stand on its own and stand right beside all the rest as being a thing that exists and allows you to think about, like, it gives you something to think about and being like, what does this mean to me, what does this mean to everyone else, and is it something worth thinking about? And I'd say Force Awakens is like, I really love Force Awakens. I think it's such a fun movie that I love rewatching, but it's also one that you can be like, okay, you don't really have to think about it a lot. Like it's knows what it wants to do and it does it really well. And Last Jedi allows you to like, it's got its ups and it's got its downs, but it allows you to think about what those ups and downs mean. And I'm glad that something like that exists. Like, especially with like, I know some people don't agree, but it's like the reason why I love Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is because it does something different and it lets you think about its certain ideas and changes. Like they're not just generic blockbusters. They're like
I was kind of with you when you were talking about Jedi to a certain degree, but I don't agree with your assertion for that with Guardians 2. No, I don't agree with that
Guardians 2, but
I think I wouldn't call Guardians 2 a generic blockbuster, but I think Guardians 2 is a shallower movie than Guardians 1 is.
Yeah, I disagree with that, but that's another discussion for another. That's another discussion for another day.
Another discussion for another day.
Cry.
And either way,
yeah,
everyone's questions will be answered about Snoke and the Midquill trilogy that takes place between episodes 6 and 7, so nobody will complain anymore, right? Because there will be Star Wars movies
we're getting a book of. We're gonna get a book eventually. Like there's gonna be a book. There's gonna be Star Wars Snoke that's gonna explain like a very detailed backstory.
If you don't think they're gonna make movies about Luke Skywalker between 6 and 7. At some point.
I can't.
No, they're not
Mark Hamill's too fucking old. You can't do that.
They're recasting Han Solo in a film that comes out next year. At some point, they're going to recast Luke Skywalker.
They are recasting Han Solo to take place so we can see Han Solo in a time period before Harrison Ford. You can't fucking have a trilogy with Mark Hamill, a trilogy with a fucking new guy, and then Mark Hamill again. You can't fucking do that.
Look, in Roseanne, they replaced Becky, and then they brought back the original Becky, so I think...
Unless it's animated, which I don't see them doing.
I mean,
you can't do a... Also, I don't think you need a trilogy.
No.
That's the only way Star Wars movies get made.
Unless it's either a trilogy or a pointless prequel or a pointless spin-off, which I could see maybe a pointless spin-off happening, but
I see first like they want to do a Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Boba Fett movie before
we don't
another.
need
We don't need them, but they
fucking
want
any
to.
of those. Like, who the fuck cares about Boba Fett? Why is he so popular?
I'm
got
fucking shit at his
I'm
job.
kind of interested in the Boba Fett just to see what the hell they do. Like, apparently the rumor was that the original idea for the Boba Fett movie was going to be digitally inserting him into the like original trilogy. It was basically like gonna be like Lion King 1.5.
That
Boba
sounds
Fett.
fucking terrible.
That sounds terrible, but I'm like I want to see
Look,
what happens with that. Like,
maybe
it's
there's a
it's an
reason
interesting
Josh
terrible.
Trank was fired and that movie was never mentioned at Celebration when it was supposed to be announced.
Because of Fan 4 Stick. That's
Yeah,
why.
and also probably because having a
Well,
Boba Fett
I
film,
think
which is just the original trilogy, seems like a waste of time.
It seems like a bigger waste of time than Rogue One, but also I think it wasn't just Fans 4 Stick, it was Josh Trank's reaction to Fans 4 Stick, which probably put the nail in the coffin.
Well, no, he got fired before Fan 4 Stick came out. I think he got fired because of the whole like that whole controversy with him filming it. His temper tantrums got word
But-
to Disney, and they're like, nope.
I will say this though. I want an Obi-Wan movie. I want an Obi-Wan movie.
Directed by who? Who would you want to be directed?
I have no idea. I want it to be directed by someone who likes sand. I'll tell you that much.
I'm trying to
So
think of
George Miller.
Oh man.
you know what? George Miller doing a Star Wars movie. Yes.
George Miller with a Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan Kenobi movie.
George
I
Miller
would-
or Mark Miller?
Isn't Ewan McGregor? Isn't Ewan McGregor an Australian, or am I dumb?
He's Scottish, you dope.
Oh,
What are you talking about?
I'm racist.
And on that racist note, I think we've been going for almost 2.5 hours of random rambling with no cohesive nature, just like The Last Jedi, so it all fits in. Thank you, thank you everyone for listening. I have been FTA.
I have been Steph fan of Last Jedi.
What? And I have been David Wan Lurker? No. Let me try this again. I have been Mary Jade Watson. Wait, no, that's wrong too. This is David the Lurker. David whatever.
And I'm sure we'll do another one when episode 9 comes out, possibly for the Han Solo movie if we can be bothered to see it. But in the meantime, thank you everyone for listening, and may the Force be with you, or not, because the Force is a load of shit.
May the fast be with you.
Tying into
Sorry,
that brand.
franchise is terrible.